Brown cow.
There it is.
Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS
Hello.
podcast, everyone. We are once again joined by our good friend, Josh Bentley.
Cheers.
I love the energy that you bring every time you're on.
Yes.
And the whiskey only enhances that.
I love to be here.
This is episode. We love to have you. Episode 186. We got another special guest I do want to mention before we get into these sponsors, but kind of a hint for those that don't know about this yet. We're excited. We've got a couple of awesome products tonight.
Yeah.
With Josh, I'll say that first since you brought it brand new to us. It's the Montecristo Epic 12. This is a brand new release from Montecristo and Altadis USA, and we're very excited to learn about it, smoke it. I've been fortunate enough to smoke one already prior to the podcast, and we're in for a treat tonight. And then we also have a special guest that you guys can't see on screen yet. We have him in the green room, as I like to call it. We have Starlight Distillery. This is bottled and bond Indiana straight bourbon whiskey. And we've got a special guest from Starlight Distillery, and we'll introduce him in just a moment as we do the sponsors here. But I want to thank you guys for tuning in, especially those that are part of the patreon.com/bourbon and BS podcast support. You guys are amazing. This is a way for you guys to continue helping us to do this. If you're enjoying the show, we really ask you to tell other people about it. Share it with people you think would enjoy part 1, part 2. We're a little different than a lot of the whiskey and cigar podcasts, but another way you
Ow now, brown cow.
All right, we're back.
All right.
Looks a little spotty again, as I literally was talking about my shoddy internet. For those that are listening to the audio, the feed went out. So again, patreon.com/bourbon and PS podcast.
Is this a bunch of amateurs?
It really is.
Jesus Pete.
It's only episode 186. I mean, you'd think
Wow.
we've got a slight learning curve here. So by episode 300 and some, we should be good.
How many
But
times you been on, Josh?
Trying to share,
All
man.
right,
I'm trying
patreon.com.
to-
Let me get through this here.
Yes.
Patreon.com, $5, $10, and $25 tiers, or you guys can do a one-time contribution. Also getting set up, thought it'd be easier for those that want to donate a bottle through some money is a Venmo account. So it'd be a really easy one-time contribution to the show that we could do. And you guys just Venmo something to us for a bottle that you'd like us to try, or if you're just feeling generous and you want to do that. We also have some t-shirts. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Patreon and everything else, you guys will be able to get t-shirts online, putting the final touches on the website, but that'll be up here shortly. So we're looking forward to that as well. I had a call today. They are just trying to finish up those final touches to make everything easily available to you guys. I also want to thank our other sponsors, and this is like a ad show. I hate listening to podcasts that do this. You know what I mean? Like, just like it's 5 minutes of sponsors. But we want to thank Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. That's kind of the source of this, the basis of this podcast. Tinder Box has the Epic 12 available, which is also by our other sponsor, Altadis USA, which is where Josh is from. And we thank him every week. If you guys listen, we have him really do a lot of hard work getting the sponsorship set up, and we appreciate the support, Josh, not only with you being on and always, bringing guests and bottles and cigars and all that stuff, but through that sponsorship, it's really helped out over the last couple of years, and we hope to continue that relationship. BS Cigar Company, the gold and silver in stock. If you guys want some of those, definitely check out BS Cigar Company, and also Tinder Box at Easton can get those out to you, no problem. Or you can just contact me or the podcast, and we will point you in the right direction. All right. That's awesome. You guys are awesome. Altadis is awesome. Josh is awesome. Tinderbox, BS Cigar Company, all the patrons, everyone that's sharing it. Everyone is good. You were listening. Awesome.
Awesome, bro.
Sweet, bro. Gains, bro. All right. With that being said, I'm going to take a sip of this Starlight Distillery and introduce our special guest. And Josh, thanks for hooking this up. But from Starlight Distillery, we have Christian Huber. Christian, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.
Wow, we got your connection too.
Yeah, talk to you about this awesome whiskey we have in front of you. So thank you again.
Yeah.
Welcome, Christian.
Oh, we got some volume. You got headphones?
I can.
Yeah, we're getting a little delay in feedback.
Hear me better now?
No. Let me see what we got here. No, we got echo cancellation on. If you've got some headphones or something like that.
Yeah, let me I might be able to look for some. Let me go look though. I don't know if I have them in front of me though. Yeah, let me
Seriously, intro hour tonight, guys.
Sorry about that. Let me go look and I'll try to find
No,
you.
it's not your fault. I'll tell you what, before you do that, I'm actually going to disconnect you and you hook back up. We'll try it, okay?
All right.
Actually, you just log off because if I kick you off, you're probably not coming back on.
All right, let me see this.
Yeah, close out and then join us again.
Yep.
And then I'll go through the audio and take that part out. So this is a great start with the technical difficulties again. I am really tired.
Not our
of
first
this.
rodeo, though. Not our first rodeo. We've been through this.
It's not. Yeah.
We've been through this.
Hey,
before.
the video is great right now. So
The video does look. We look great.
The video
If
looks
you're looking at
good.
this, anyone out there?
If anybody remembers the last time that I stopped by in the audience.
That's right.
Went inside to grab a glass and I flipped the wrong switch, killed the power.
I don't
Ruined
live in
everything.
a shack. We got issues. Technology
You're not-
has been failing me in 2021. Like I had my Apple HomePod just stopped working. Took it in the Apple store. They're like, "Yeah, we don't fix those." I'm like, "So I have a $300 paperweight at this point.
Jeez.
Can I use it as a Bluetooth?" No. Okay, cool. That's neat.
Dustin did the same thing Josh did. Came out and turned the lights off.
He just turned the switch the other way. Yeah. All right, let's try him on here. Christian, let's try now. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you better. Can you hear me?
Perfect. We can hear you and there's no echo. Yes.
Perfect.
That one's not on me. Okay. So we're going to get back into it. I'm going to cut all that part out of the audio. Ray and Sean started at 7:30. I'm glad you guys got a little bonding time. All right. And scene. Christian.
There we go.
We had a little echo there before. We got it all fixed up for the moment. We've got your bottle, Starlight Distillery Bottled and Bond. Tell us, if you would, a little bit about the Huber family, right? You're seventh generation. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, founded back in 1843. Over 178 years here on the property. So kind of a little history about us. We're from Baden-Baden, Germany. Settled this property in 1843 under vines as a winery and a brandy producer. Like many of you guys know, the Ohio River Valley was known for brandy before it was known for actually bourbon whiskey. So that's kind of what my family settled here for. We went everything from Vitis vinifera, or the vines indigenous to Europe, to going into the American grapes or the Labrusca grapes, Concord, Niagara, Catawba. Then throughout the generations, it's been passed down throughout my family until today. How the distillation came up in our company or into our family was that our family is Indiana's largest sustainable fruit farm and Indiana's largest sustainable vineyard, and now into craft distillation. So we always reuse stuff that's coming off the property, off the winery. So our brandy was actually using extra grapes we had off the harvest. So when it came down to it, we just wanted to keep our farm sustainable. I want to give my kids the option to run it. So it's one of those things that we're really self-conscious about what we're doing. And brandy allowed us, to take the extra fruit off the property and store it for later. That's kind of how it came up and about. The Starlight Distillery was officially formed as a DSP in 2001 by my father. So we hold the DSP IN 31. Kind of how the story goes. My dad and Jason, our head distiller for the brandy side of things, kept working, kept putting basically brandy back into about 05, 06, 07. That's when we meet Dave Pickerel, and the story kind of goes from the actual brandy side of things into the actual production of whiskey. My dad gets pointed to the head of ADI to actually form the American Distilling Institute with Owen Powell. And of course, this is where I'm probably 10, 11, 12 at this time. And Dave Pickerel came in our life with Lisa Wicker and a few others. Those were the young days where, Old Scout, OKI, and those labels dominated it. And there was very, very few craft distilleries here in the nation. But Dave and Dad used to experiment quite a bit. So I was a little kid, probably not more than, 12, 13 years old, watching the craft industry kind of boom. Dave used to spend the night at our house in our old family home. And to be completely honest, and I know Dave would be laughing right now when I say this, very first time I ever got drunk was with Dave and Dad fighting about who made the best finished whiskey. It was Hill Rock Oloroso versus what would be known as Midwinter's Night Dram in a few years, which was port barrel finish NGP from High West. Yeah. But as those guys got older, my dad kind of switched from the production of brandy into the production of whiskey. But ironically, Indiana did not give the right to distill whiskey yet other than NGP. So it took us into about 2011, 2012, and then finally in 13 to get the law switched. When Dad and Dave were having fun with our Carl still, basically experimenting with whiskey down there, we went and tasted that whiskey that was 5, 6, 7 years old, and we kind of picked out 2 distinctive mash bills, which was our 3-grain 60-20-20, which I'll get in a little bit, and our 4-grain 51-20-29. The funniest thing I remember as a kid, I was, again, 16, 17, Dad had asked me, what do you want to do when you get older? Or what kind of whiskey do you want to make when you get older? And I basically looked at him and I said, anything but a wheated mash bill, which ironically, since he was the king of wheat with Maker's Mark going forward, we wanted to do something with high rye. So Starlight as a whole, we kind of wanted to focus under high rye and things that we could grow off our estate. The estate right now is 850 acres, right, of different vegetables and fruits, everything from strawberries, blackberry, black raspberries, and the whole 9 yards. And one of the things we really focus on is the sustainability of that. In our mash bills, even today, we have non-GMO corns into our rye that we grow here on the property, all sustainably done. The Starlight Distillery, like I said, wouldn't be here today without the people I mentioned before. Dave Pickerel, Lisa Wicker especially, which was my mentor. She was coming off the Beam family and really taught me when I was really young how to taste the difference between every subtlety coming off the still, between the mash bills, and really helped me pick out my barrel portfolio. So the Starlight Distillery wouldn't be here today without the people that we mentioned and the farm that we've been doing. Going forward, we partnered up with Vendome for a custom still. That custom still was something that Dad was super, super proud of. So in retrospective, we were super proud to, carry on the tradition with Vendome. So that's just kind of the history up to getting to the actual distillation.
And that's where we're at. Yeah. That's like you said, it's more recent, right? I mean, this is a more recent project for the family, which is kind of exciting.
Very true.
I'm sorry, Christian, what are you sipping on right now?
So this is actually one of our just single barrels I brought out. I thought I had a bottle of Bond at home, and I have a sherry that I thought was a bottle of Bond, but I'm halfway colorblind, so purple and blue looked really close together. So I switched it up and went to one of our single barrels that we actually have here. But the Bottle and Bond project was something that a lot of people, the whiskey geek especially, went away from just because it's a lower proof. But for a craft distillery producing your own whiskey, that was something we really, really wanted to work hard on to show that, hey, we're Indiana bourbon, but we're not NGP. So that was a huge, stick in the ground for us to say, like, look, we're actually distilling, milling, aging, bottling all on house. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys about it.
No, it's fantastic. And that is that. I mean, obviously MGP in the industry, if for those that are big bourbon people, I mean, that's going to be the name of, as far as a lot of people sourcing from that. Now we're getting some comments like Freddie Burt. He's in a local bourbon group. I know Josh is part of some bourbon groups and I've seen it. Nate's seen it quite a bit, is that you've got some like Starlight picks is what we're hearing about too. And, then we'll get into the Bottle and Bond, but that's a big part of your project, it seems, or maybe it's not a huge part, but that's a lot of the buzz that I'm hearing. Here's, Freddie here saying, his local bourbon group has done a few Starlight picks, got one coming soon. Can't wait. This is something that I assume is getting your name in some of those bourbon groups that you're making you guys self available for these picks. Now, are you working with mostly like bars or mostly groups or both, or how's that working for you?
We took a very different philosophy as a distillery than most. We love individuality, cask to cask differences, and we love expressing the story of the individual cask and how it got there. We make geeky whiskey for the whiskey geek. I mean, that's the thing I strive for the best. And it starts in the field. Again, I can talk about our background, but me and my brother are both wine forward first. And the wine industry has a lot of geekiness about it, but we took that winemaking philosophy into the actual still house. Every barrel of Starlight, we can break it down to where the actual corn was distilled at, or actually not distilled at, grown at. And then I can tell you when it was milled. I can tell you what cooker it was in, which yeast strain, going into the still, who made the cuts. With Starlight, there's no standard operating procedure of making the cuts. It's all done by the individual running the still and all done by hand. And again, that creates a lot of variation, which are really cool, but particularly going into my family and the picks. My father is a more old school guy, right? He's an Elijah Craig guy, and he loves Elijah Craig. That's what he distills like. But his mash bill reflects what he likes. Same thing with my brother. My brother's a huge Four Roses guy, high rye OB guy, OBSV, OBSF. I mean, that's him.
I feel like we'd fit in with your family really well.
I'm on the other side of things, which I was going to crack later. I'm an old turkey fan. So one of the biggest things I have.
Let me put you solo here so everyone can see that, because I can't even see it here.
Yeah, an old 1855 reserve. I love wild turkey, and I love NGP. So when it came down to it, I reflect what I like to drink. So how I cut the still reflects what I like to drink. Me and my brother both did our senior dissertations on wood oak extraction. So we use 7 different cooperages between inside the family, and each one of those cooperages have different profiles, from heavy toast, light char to heavy toast, heavy char to toasted char. I mean, charred heads. It's a lot of variability from air dried wood to non-air dried wood. We have a lot of variability from cask to cask, and we do that on purpose because we don't blend like a normal whiskey house. For everyone that's listening, when you come here for a pick, we just don't roll you 3 random barrels and say, here, which one do you want? That's not our motto. We find what you guys like to drink and try to put you on a profile, either Dad, Blake, or I. And then going forward of like, hey, do you like my 2-year air dried, heavy toasted char 1 toasted head, or do you like my Kelvin char 3 and char 4? Because they're very different. Same thing with my brother. And we really work on the individuality of what you guys like versus like our particular style, because we have so many.
I mean, that's very personalized. I love that. I love hearing that. That's it. Like you said, I feel like it's a little bit unique. Now, I haven't been on any like barrel picks myself, but I've talked to a lot of people. We've had people on the show that have done that, and it's cool to see that, because I know that, you know, from my experience with people that are close to me, it is exactly that. It's not the, you know, 3 barrels or whatever. It's kind of, they try to maybe ask like what they're looking for, and then especially in the last year or two, obviously everything's been a little different for a lot of people. But I mean, you're doing it from afar, and it's basically, hey, here are, you know, 5 sample bottles, and they're usually like, you know, maybe at the most 200 mil or something like that. And it's like, here, you try these, and you tell us what, you know, rank them, you know, 1 through 5 type thing, and then we'll go from there. So that's really cool to hear that kind of a personalized, you know, personal touch type of experience. That's amazing.
And you know, the crazy thing is every single person has its own individual palate. Even like regionally speaking, the Midwest versus the East Coast, West Coast. We sold our first international barrel in Switzerland. Like every single culture, every single area has its own distinctive profile, and there's different profiles within, you know, that area as well. But we try to really work on that and make, you know, our entry proofs vary from 108 to 125. And, you know, we do even finishing casks. So you can come here and taste a sherry barrel, a port barrel. the cigar batch coming up is, like I said, the Umbriana wood or Armagnac and Cognac cask. We really have fun and uniqueness, and we take our winemaking background into that bourbon industry to help us with the finishes. And so that's kind of I can keep talking about different projects and different things I have like that, because that's just kind of my geekiness of it. We went to Portugal this summer to buy port barrels and the whole 9 yards. So I'd love to have you guys down and, taste through some stuff, because, we have a lot of variability, and it's really cool for you guys to taste the 3 mash bills and then even further. So, taste them as a finish and see how they all incorporate together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's dive into this a little bit as far as the bottled and bond. So it says on here, Starlight Distillery, Carl T. Huber's bottled and bond Indiana straight bourbon whiskey, 100 proof, obviously, aged 4.5 years, and then selected by master distiller B. Huber. Is that who's B. Huber? That's your brother? My
younger brother. So, which he might be popping in here in a second. You might get both of us. I don't know. He was out on date night tonight, so I don't know if he's going to pop in here afterwards or not. But I told him.
I mean, it's probably best that he doesn't. I mean, I'm not gonna. I don't know how far along we are, but whatever. It'd be great to meet him. I'm not saying that. I feel like that came across wrong.
No, it's.
But anyways, this says batch B201. Is that just one of your guys' codes? Is that how that works, or what does that mean?
Yeah. So every single code, quote unquote, has a different number. So every batch has its own number, but B for bottled and bond, finishings will have an FB finishing barrel number, and then regular just Carl T will just have a blank batch number, and then of course single barrels have the barrel number.
Okay. And then, so obviously bottled and bond, you're looking at, we talked about this when we had previous guests on. You have the 2 seasons, correct? Mm-hmm. As far as that goes with the barrels. So basically a 6-month season, like, half and half of the year, they have to be from the barrels of that. What's the month range again?
January to the end of June, and then July to the end of December.
So basically pretty simple. First half of the year in the second half of the year, everything has to be picked from that. It all has to be 100 proof, right? It has to be at least 4 years. Yep. And obviously that's what it says on the bottle here. Is this something that, it says is a batch number? How big is your batch as far as a product like this?
So that batch actually was about 10 barrels. So that's one of our actual larger batches, which was it was fun. My brother put that one out for the general market. As Starlight was getting bigger, we wanted to do, really show people that, hey, Starlight is not NGP, and hey, Starlight is something that it's its own distillery. So we wanted to actually, get into the marketplace, a bottle and bond product, to really show that and showcase, the farm and our actual production. So that was one of the biggest blends we've done. Carl T can range. I mean, our Carl T blended whiskey, we've now got into 20 to 30 barrel dumps. So it's getting larger. But that one was a 10 barrel dump for us.
Wow. And you do this on a regular basis, correct?
Yeah. So we put out one every season. So we'll put one in the first half of the year, one in the second half of the year. And different people will do it. My dad, myself, my brother all have different renditions of what bottle and bond truly is. Now, we all have different cooperages, right? So when you look at the bottle, that B Huber, T Huber, or C Huber really plays a difference, because if we were a large distillery, it'd be like the difference between Elijah Craig, Parker Heritage, and Heaven Hill. They'd be different brands, but with Starlight, we're a lot smaller, right? So we have to keep everything under one cohesive logo. We'd be too small and too spread out if we weren't. So that person distilling and who's blending really showcases a lot of what is going to be in that bottle. If it's going to be more fruit, high rye, if it's going to be more barrel influence or more corn, more old school kind of style. So it really does play a big difference into what's going to go in. And my brother, you should showcase quite a bit of fruit, should be some spice in there. Typically,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, typically it's Canton cooperage. My brother showcases a 2-year air dried wood from, like I said, Lebanon, Kentucky. And then it is heavy toasted, then flash char 3'd with toasted heads or charred heads. So they both in particular, it's still a char 3, but just heavy toasted, thin flash charred. Getting those Maillard reaction, those hemicellulose breakdowns, pulling out the wood sugars a lot, and really showcasing the fruit and the clean distillate that he has.
So you said this batch was 10 barrels. Can you give our listeners an idea, like how many bottles are we talking about?
So in particular, our bottles, quote unquote, barrels yield about 204. It's kind of been the average this year, bottles per barrel. So if you think about that, 204 isn't a drastic, that is kind of our average yield. Now we're only thinking with a 10 barrel dump about 2,000 bottles at strength. So depending on where those batches lead, so if they were all, let's magically say 118 proof, of course, we'll add a lot more water to get it down to 100 versus if they're all at 108, 110, it'd take a lot less water to get it down to 100. So this batch would have probably been around, 2,500, 2,600 bottles in total, that we'd crank out to the marketplace. Again, not a huge amount of volume, but for us, that was a good first step in the right direction.
Yeah, I would say you had your family's picture posted in a few of the larger places that you can buy liquor in Louisville. I won't name any names. You can say if you know it, but yeah.
Well,
It's
and
big.
we're again, we just make geeky whiskey for the whiskey geek, right? We're not trying to we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're just trying to, showcase our individual story and what we're doing with Starlight. We make a very clean whiskey, very fruit-driven whiskey. High rye is historically what we love and what we do. But again, it comes down to this sense of place. If you guys were here, I know you can't see outside the window behind the house, but we're sitting on, like I said, pretty much a vineyard behind the house, and it rolls into the actual rick houses that are coming up. We're about ready to actually start harvesting corn here in about a week and a half and really start cranking out some bourbon. Right now we're running the last little bit of rye that we have on hand, and then it's straight into 4-grain production for us. But, we're a working farm. We're agriculture first. My dad always got in a fight with Dave Pickrell because he was starting a farm to bottle whiskey place up on the East Coast at the time. And Dad always said, "Dave, how many tractors do you own?" "What do you mean, how many tractors do I own?" He said, "I don't have any." My dad said, "You're not farm to table." He goes, I have a full department that's dedicated to growing what we put into our bottle. And that's kind of my philosophy of hey, we are terroir driven whiskey. And the word terroir is a sense of place, right? We're trying to capture, the place of Starlight, right? I couldn't do that if I was Source Whiskey, and I have nothing wrong with Source Whiskey. Again, one of my favorite distilleries are MGPI. So nothing wrong with that. But for us, we're a distillery. We're not an independent bottler. And we're so proud to be able to, have the quality control of, our grains, our milling, our mashing, our fermentations. The reason why it's even called Starlight Distillery is, it wasn't just the Huber family doing it. It was the entire town. We had to talk to everyone in the town to get them to grow for us. So we went to those guys and said, "Hey, we're going to pay you good money, grow quality grains in a sustainable manner that we can have and make into whiskey." These are some of the guys I went to school with, their dads, and now it's them going into it. And they can actually come to the distillery and, taste the actual whiskey that came from their farms. And I think that's a really cool spot for those guys to be proud of, is saying "Hey, I helped grow this." And, it's from the town, and everyone can smile and, be a part.
How big is the town?
So Starlight is very, very tiny. It is, I do not know the population, but well under 1,000 people in total.
Wow.
So it's a farming community.
Yeah.
We're 960 feet above sea level, above Louisville, Kentucky. But we're only 20 minutes from downtown. So where we go to eat, where my brother's at date night right now, is in Louisville. But we're as close as you can get to it. But if you look across the river, you see the Knobstone Escarpment, or that giant rise in the elevation. We're just right on top of that, overlooking the valley. Unfortunately, we were on the quote unquote wrong side of the river at the beginning to be making whiskey, but we're happy that everyone has embraced us the way they have. And, I can't be more proud of what the family has done before me, and, continue on the tradition of, making great wines and great spirits on the property. But yeah, terroir is something that we are always about, and terroir is something that
we got a comment from, just for those on audio, we got a comment from Eric, who's watching on YouTube. I want to remind anyone, you can watch this live on YouTube as well, or after the fact, because he's out there saying, he's like, why aren't there more people on YouTube right now? He's like, this is one of the best podcasts and informative podcasts I've heard, and he's a big fan of you. So he says, it's a word I keep hoping more whiskey producers will start to embrace. Soil, water, and climate are so important to whiskey. So go ahead, Christian. I'm sorry. I just want to point that out.
One of the biggest things that I try to advocate for is what Scotland did. You have Highland, you have Lowland, you have Speyside, you have Camden Town. And, I hope the United States gets to the point with that with bourbon. Because, again, the area that we're in, Southern Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee right now, I mean, there's no lie that there's something special going on here with barrel aging and what the barrels actually do and what they produce. But Texas, even, Texas whiskey is a very different climate, very different soil, very different whole aspect. And again, going down there, Garrison Brothers is one of the ones that come to mind that, I got to see that guy grow up. I actually still have his first ever release that came out down there. But even going to Colorado, what High West is putting out, or if you go down to the East Coast and go more towards California, every single area has its own mesoclimate and their own microclimate that will change how whiskey ages and interact. One of the great, blessings that we have here in the Midwest is the perfect 4 seasons, right? We have a true spring, a true summer, a true winter, and true fall. And right now that really pushes that barrel. It will really, again, the whiskey as a whole and kind of what's going to happen. I'm a geek at heart, so this is something that I get really passionate about with oak.
Carry on. I'm loving it.
The whiskey when you talk about, whiskey, the barrel has so much influence, right? All those esters that are formed are coming from barrel precursors that are binded over time, right? And the way they express themselves is how they uncleave themselves with oxygen. But when you're looking at that barrel in particular, you need that hot air, but you also need that real cold summer to pull it back out, right? To have balance, right? Or it becomes astringent. But here in the Ohio River Valley, we have a great, ecosystem for that. And again, we are getting warmer. We're having hotter peaks and cooler actually bottoms, which in turn is actually doing some whiskey a really, really great thing. The one thing we're suffering about right now is we're getting younger and younger wood. You want to talk about everyone talks about dusties, right? A lot of Starlight, we use what we call tight grain select barrels, or older, more mature wood. And that's why we do a longer toast than flash char, because we want that breakdown in lignin. We want those tannins to be leached out, but we want that long, slow toasting process to build those Maillard reaction, then give the char layer, that char 3. That way, as the whiskey's aging, you're not pulling the bitter astringency in the younger youth wood, but giving that whiskey enough tannin to bind with that more toasted aroma, but also giving enough char to kind of find out those heavier, fattier oils that come across the still. And I can go into, a lot of that, but that's just our philosophy was, we can do it right. We want to spend a little bit more extra money on the wood and let that speak for us and let the distillate shine through of what it naturally is.
Is there, obvious question now with all the lumber shortage, the wood shortage, is this affecting the cost? Is it affecting, like you say, you're dealing with younger wood? Is this something that your family and basically with these projects, especially with using, on the whiskey side of things, obviously with the other stuff, you were just in Portugal, you said, buying barrels. That's something that could be affected obviously long-term as well. But initially, is this a kind of an outside threat to the business that it's going to go up and up in cost, and also the fact that it's going to be harder to find, this supply? Because not only do you have, it's the perfect storm for this. Obviously, we're still in a bourbon craze, right? Mm-hmm. So everyone is expanding that has the money to do so, or is investing to do so. And you guys are plugging along. All of a sudden, you run into the bourbon craze as you guys get into it, and now all of a sudden we have the pandemic, and all of a sudden we have wood shortages all around.
Yep. And, the great thing about us is that, we use cooperages that were, our winemaking side of the family is what saves us right now. We're one of the original users of Kelvin Cooperage out of Louisville, Kentucky. We're one of their very first clients. Same thing with Canton. They were a wine barrel company. Same thing with ISC. The crazy thing is that we were using their barrels for wine in the, I want to call them the quote unquote, it's, they're, lack of better terms, it's an industry that they don't care about volume. They care about the relationship and how long you've been using them. And since we've been using them since the 70s for wine, we haven't ever felt that, but we use a very distinctively different barrel, right? I'm just going to use these as an example. For us, we can spend a lot more money on our wood, and we do, right? Again, our cask on average yield, or the cost wise, are anywhere between $380 and all the way up to I get some over $1,450 for a new white oak American barrel. And before everyone cringes and say why and how and what makes all that difference is that being in the wine industry and seeing how France has cultured their forests and what they do, I spend a lot of extra money on that time and older oak. Again, tighter grain will build more pressure up, which will send a lot more liquid into the actual staves. But air drying wood, at least for 2 or 3 years, 24 months at least, will break down those tannin change, leach all that out. And then doing the heavy toasted process before you flash char it, again, we'll get a lot more of that caramelization, those hemicellulose bonds inside of it, that degradation of lignin inside of it will give you the sweetness and give you the fruit that you're looking for without the bitter tannin. But again, you have to go into it thinking that, you're not going to produce a fifth that's going to be at $15. And that's just kind of the, where you need to be in kind of the limbo effect. But it's just, and kind of leveraging into the cigar world, right? With you guys, right? There's all kinds of different valleys. Some are harder to grow in versus others, but you pay a little bit extra money for those microclimates and that the better tobacco in the world. But in general, we really want to strive to getting older, more mature oak that it's not easy to grow, but it's grown in a cooler climate that's going to have that buildup, that's going to have the maturity, no green wood sap to it. It's going to be what we want. They're investments, right? For us as a distillery, right, we're only putting back about 1,000 barrels a year. So we want to take ultimate care of those 1,000 barrels at all cost. And, that's why we spend money on it. Our cheapest barrels that we run, even the big boys would laugh and say that's expensive, but we're proud of those barrels, and we did a lot of research, me, my brother, my dad, and the entire team at Starlight, that we all feel confident. We're all proud about the whiskey that's coming out of them.
186 episodes in, that's the first time we've ever had someone mention the actual cost of a barrel.
Cost of the barrel, yeah.
Just the barrel itself.
We had, Greg talk a little bit more about wood, right?
Greg Snyder?
Yeah. Greg Snyder, Christian?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had Greg on a while back. Now he's with, Chicken Cock Whiskey, and he was talking a lot of stories that it sounds like your family can kind of share as well, as far as just, the random just hanging out with these more or less like legends of the industry that people hear the names, and then it's like, oh, yeah, well, he was over the house the other night, and, we had him over for dinner type stuff. He had some great stories, and he was talking about wood as well, as far as what goes into it.
Yeah. I have a picture. I wish I can go get it for you. I have a picture when I was probably 9 or 10 with it was Dave Pickerel and then Wes Henderson when they had Angels Envy, 100% when they were starting off. And again, they would probably cringe, or Bacardi would cringe at me because I was holding a glass of whiskey like this. But those are the guys that, I grew up in a very European family, and I started, really young, smelling the difference between whiskey. And again, it was one of those things where I was ultimately in a privileged spot to be able to learn and listen to those legends. And again, they helped, basically they forced me away from this area to go learn from people, to bring it back to the community. But again, without those guys and without those people, I would have never had the opportunity to even be talking to you today. I'm 25 years old. I have a lot to learn.
You ruined it. I was going to ask you at the end of this, before we let you go, for those listening on the audio, and I'm sure this is just a surprise as well, is that especially on the audio, because we post this after the fact, I was going to be like, Christian, just for anyone listening, and after they listen to everything you said, how old are you? And I didn't even know. But 25, I think you just blew a couple of minds as they're probably driving down the road listening to this on the audio later after the fact.
Hopefully Spencer doesn't crash.
The very first day I ever started distilling, and talk about a birthday gift, my father said on my 13th birthday, "You're old enough to distill by yourself." Then I made a barrel Applejack on our Christian Carl still. The day I turned 13, November 19th, he said, "You're old enough to do it. You know what you're doing." But it's very different.
Very different childhoods, by the way.
Well,
and I feel like you had a very different childhood than most.
Well, going into it, I always grew up on the farm, but I grew up as a kid, literally playing around the still house, kicking a soccer ball under tanks and, smelling the fermentation, and dad teaching you like, hey, I could smell when the still was coming over for the head cut from the other side of the room whenever I was 8 or 9.
It's in your blood, man.
You could just, but when it comes down to it, alcohol doesn't have to be this thing that, you have to keep away from kids. As long as you respect it and know what you're doing with it, kids can grow up in a way that they have respect for it, because it is those subtle nuances, and it is something that, of course, I was in high school and, ham special light in the back of the F-150 in a cornfield kind of moments, but it was one of those things that, I still woke up hungover as hell, and I came into the still house wanting to learn more, and you respect the product as a whole. And you respect the people that blaze the trail in front of you. And that's why, Wild Turkey was one of the ones that I ultimately fell in love with. I finished off a cheesy gold foil given to me one of my great buddies, Scott Early. And, tasting history and, learning about the guys that were before you, that when bourbon wasn't popular, they had to put it in decanters and stuff just to get people to pick it up. But those are the guys that I love and respect, and hopefully I can carry the torch and, in a little way and fashion and keep moving forward.
Absolutely.
Well, that's what I love. I love there's so much crossover, and Christian and I have talked about this, in between tobacco.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the distilling process and the vineyards, that he's working in, and you think of some of the greatest cigar makers and tobacco growers in our industry, right?
Yeah.
And there's so much commonality in, with what Christian is talking about and being able to grow up in it, right? You and I and Nate, you and I, we didn't have that luxury, unfortunately, to be there. But, we're seeing that now, Christian, in our industry, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of Nestor, right? Nestor Plasencia Jr., who makes AJ Fernandez, a great cigar maker that makes some of our cigars. The Grupo de Maestros from our company, and the ones who made the cigar that we're smoking tonight, Christian. There's so many parallels, and that's what we get. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt while these guys are commenting.
Keep going. No, I'm just throwing them up there so if anyone watching, they can kind of chime in.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of compliments going on. So that's out there saying, he's smart guy. Same thing with his daughter. Kind of just it's the family thing. This is actually perfect for the topic tonight, by the way.
Yeah.
Part 2.
Yeah. This is. Go ahead, Nick.
I was going to ask Christian real quick, since we're still talking about the whiskey. Are you able to tell us what the mash bill is on the bottled and bond?
Yep. So this is my brother. 51% corn, 20% rye, 20% malted barley, and only 9% wheat. Like I said, the story coming historically from us, and the way we distill, and even the yeast going into it, we do everything to keep it fruity. In particular, because that's what Blake wants, and so his barrels, he keeps that bold fruit note into it. But again, he wants that rye to speak on the back palate to round out the palate.
That's the spice, yeah.
Yeah, and he, in particular, how he distills is he takes a very large head cut, a very, very narrow heart cut, and takes a lot of tails. Blake makes a lot of our blackberry whiskey because he cuts so high on his bourbon and rye that we have so much tails that we will rerun up the column to make light whiskey and turn that into our blackberry whiskey at the end. But he takes that very, very narrow heart cut, and he doesn't mess with oils. He really takes time on to running the deflameter, really, really heavy, run and reflux, clean whiskey. And back to it. I mean, he's the funny part is he's only 23 years old, and the whiskey that you're tasting now was whenever he was 19, made before he ever turned 21.
That's amazing. That's amazing. When you said, the fruity, is this like all the Starlight bourbons and whiskeys? Is that the theme, or is this like kind of like a signature to you guys, or just this bottled and bond product?
So definitely from me and Blake, you'll find a lot of fruit. For me in particular, you'll find a lot more rye, like candy, orange peel. You'll find a lot more burnt wood sugars in the nose compared to my brother. My brother, you'll typically find that raspberry, strawberry jam, that fruit nose with the rye. My barrel cooperages, I speak a little bit more to the more caramel, burnt wood sugars. Again, I use a lot of heavy char 3s, charred heads, bigger wood, so to speak. But again, I use a lot of rye, just like him. Yeah. My dad, on the flip side, if you're used to having more of that tobacco, dusty, cherry notes to it, that kind of style, then you're more my dad's house. And that's just kind of the difference between them all. And again, in a blend in particular, like depending on who's blending it, we advocate for others and not so much on less. So it just depends on who actually is blending it. Again, our marketing people think we're master distillers. Me and my brother are just here, and we're happy about what we're doing. We don't declare ourselves anywhere close to it. But, marketing is marketing, and do what we do. But we're just having fun. He can, you would come over here and say hello real quick. He actually just walked in.
Dude,
so
I assume date night's over.
Yeah. So how are you doing?
Oh, he didn't tell us about date night. I'm sorry. That came across wrong.
So
how was date night?
Oh, it was good. Just a little dinner tonight, a little after work. Getting ready to pick some grapes on Friday, but a little bottling tomorrow. So spend a little night off that we don't have to pick early tomorrow morning. So, yeah.
Well, good.
He had actually bottled our. We just are doing a small batch port finished today. So you were on the bottling line doing that early today, getting it done. So, but they're tasting your bottle and bond.
Oh yeah.
The B, I forget the actual name or the number.
I got you right here. It's B2101.
Yeah. Yeah, so that bottle and bond was a really nice blend. We did a lot of Canton barrels within that, 1 to 2 char, 3 to 4 char, toasted heads, and some charred heads in there, kind of pronouncing some of that nice cherry fruitiness, some of that nice velvety kind of vanilla finesse that kind of draws through with that, and kind of really building a really nice 100 proof, just balanced whiskey out of that.
That it is. Yeah, we've really been enjoying it here. We haven't gotten to the rating yet. We end part 1 with the rating here, but we haven't gotten there yet. We've learned a lot about it. Mm-hmm. So when was this actually bottled? Since I don't think we got to that point, right? This is the one that you got as a gift, correct? From when you were out at Starlight.
That would have been in May. That would have been around May. We would have done that blend probably somewhere right around kind of late April. May, and yeah.
Right. So this is the currently available product, correct?
Yeah. We like to wait until end of March, April, May
as things start to warm back up.
The whiskey becomes balanced, just like us waiting to bottle our family reserves when October, November, early December hits. There's a good balancing point there to where it's not screaming hot or really, really cold. So you have a good balance in the cask.
100%. I did have a quick question here before we go on to the cigar. We do need to touch on the cigar since we have Josh here with a brand new Montecristo Epic.
Hey, this is information. I love this.
It's Josh's fault. He got Christian on this.
Absolutely.
I did want to mention we had a comment on YouTube here. Julie asked, "What European countries do you have roots in?" You had mentioned that you'd been over there. Obviously, you said Portugal, correct?
Yeah, our family's, of course, German from Baden-Baden, but the Huber family kind of branched out from there. So we have a winery, Huber, in Baden-Baden. There's one in Alsace, France. There's actually one in Austria. So that's just kind of where my family settled out to. But us in particular, we'll go.
You currently have family? I'm sorry to interrupt, but you have family there still?
Distant cousins, not any
Okay.
immediate. They all.
Those are the roots, though.
Yeah, the roots are all in Europe still, but we'll travel to Europe quite a bit. Either looking for cask. We're supposed to be going back to France to go to Bordeaux to pick out some Bordeaux cask for a finish. We just got back and we did that 1969, 1973 cognac cask that we found over there. That was really cool. We went to Portugal looking for a white port cask. We've got a few of those. We found it's the same thing we do finishing. We look for these producers that have individual stories. They might not be the biggest guys, but that individual guy's story about, hey, his grapes are growing up on the Douro Valley, and I can take that story to you guys and tell him, show you where the corn's grown, but also tell you about the story of where the grapes growing. This is where the cask comes from, and that's what I'm proud about.
How do you work those networks? I mean, how do you find out about these small guys? I mean, I think that you're just glancing over this as if everyone does this, on a random Tuesday.
Well, we can talk.
We don't. I can't just be like, you know what, we're gonna head over there and just look up some small places, and I'm thinking about picking up some of these types of barrels, and you just looking like Google it.
Yeah, it's kind of it's difficult sometimes, but for when we're ever looking for certain variety of finishing barrels, I mean, we're always interested. We have a pretty big, extensive background into kind of the wine world, and we always look at some of these kind of one-off kind of places that produce really high quality, interesting, terroir driven, unique products and things that you really don't normally would find on a shelf, that you're not going to go out and think, I'm going to go and find a rye salt on the shelf, which is a port style in the south of France, or I'm going to go get Tokai from the store. But all these are very terroir driven, unique products that we find flavors and characteristics just from knowing what these products are like that we've tasted in the past, and how that can basically uplift and balance out into styles and blends that we're interested in. And sometimes, I mean, we're always looking for the next thing, and we're always just continuously experimenting. We want to find interesting barrels out there, and we're always going through and tasting, as Christian mentioned, out in the Rick House, and we'll find certain styles of barrels that we know this is going to fit really well in a port style wine, or these particular barrels are going to fit really well in something like a rum finish, or these particular barrels. So it's a really interesting development.
Yeah, we just found some rum from Martinique, some rum agricole barrels that we're really proud about. We got our hands on some Foursquare barrels that are coming out. So we had some Foursquare finished ryes, and
are you getting into any other spirits? I mean, you guys do the wine? Obviously, this is the roots of the family, obviously, and this is a newer project, right? With the Starlight Distillery. Is Starlight Distillery? Do you guys do any other spirits, or is it purely whiskey based at this point?
No, so we're whiskey based, but we're actually, I mean, brandy is still the original product that we ever produced here. Brandy is still the house. I mean, if you guys show up, I can taste you on a almost 21-year-old single pass brandy. I mean, brandy is our oldest portfolio. We only we have only one product other than the 375. That's a 6 to 8 year. Only one product under 10 years that's out on the shelf right now. All the other brandies are over 10.
Wow.
So it's really fun to taste the history and the vintage, and hopefully we want to get our actual whiskey industry up there, where you guys can come and taste the individuality between every single small cask.
And yeah, it's just really interesting. So in 2001, when Starlight Distillery actually was founded and kind of opened up, when my dad had a large part to do with the legislation changed within Indiana, because at the time there was only the one large kind of factory license that you could have as a distillery, obviously the one that's held by the MGP within Indiana forever. But for us being a small craft producer, we wanted the ability to have tours, sell our product on premise. And Indiana was always a state that we're always kind of going through, pushing through, trying to get the changes that we would like. And then in 2001, we had that change to allow us to do fruit-based spirits and to open up this artisan permit that's an artisan brandy permit. And so since that point in time, obviously, we've been a winery, opened back up to the public since the 1970s. And then we've been growing grapes since that point, always on the farm. We have a large crop of apples around the farm, peaches, all these other fruit products. It just made sense to expand into that because we have all the resources here. And for us, the sustainability aspect, being able to use our crops that are out there, use some of these things that might just kind of fall onto the ground and kind of go to the wayside, that we're actually having a particular kind of extra benefit of growing all of the fruits and vegetables or the fruits on our farm. And so then we take and make these interesting brandies like Christian mentioned. I mean, a lot of our brandy blends nowadays are between 8, 12 years old, 10 plus years, a lot of them. And you really see some of that kind of introduction of where, I mean, we grew up making brandies. And so you kind of see that stylistically in what we do with some of our whiskeys nowadays too, with really kind of drawing, when you're making a brandy, you're really trying to harness the essence of what that fruit is into the product and layering on the complexity of what the oak, and we use a majority of the toasted oak. So French oak, 90-gallon barrels a lot of the time. So we have a lot more subtle integration, less surface to volume. So it's a really interesting to try, like Christian mentioned, to try some of these products.
Yeah, this might be the first one that we get Altadis, hopefully, to sponsor a road trip out to Starlight and get Josh out there. We'll stay in Josh's room. It'll be covered by Altadis.
I'm telling you what. I mean, that was the incredible thing. It really was me getting the opportunity to go out there twice and the chemistry and the relationship that I started with Christian and in the family and. Talk a little bit, fellas, about like what the pandemic has done in terms of barrels and finishing barrels, what you guys are doing, what it's opened up, with you guys finding these barrels.
So in 2019, pre-pandemic, we did 34 single barrels in the marketplace. In 2020, we did 204 single barrels in the marketplace. And where are we up to now?
Definitely a large, substantial growth there, but really due to some really great products, really great lots of barrels that we had coming of age. We're out there evaluating. We can, a lot of the times over the first couple years, we go back and we taste some of our experiments, all the different cooperages we use, and we like to kind of keep little tabs on them through the years to see how the development's going. And we saw some of these particular lots that were going to birthday around some of these times that we knew they were going to be fantastic. And as kind of things kind of hit and then certain bottles made it out onto the market, it really just kind of compounded at that point, as you know. And it's it makes us smile just because we love to have people drink our product, to kind of see our passion in each and every bottle that we produce here and the unique styles that we can actually come up with
and we're not afraid to challenge new things. And this is going to be a good segue into the cigar you have in front of you. One of the things we tried was actually the Umbriana wood, or the Brazilian oak, which I know you guys will be having the cigar event on, the 23rd, starting around 5. Again, there'll be people lined up before then. But, the crazy thing about the Umbriana wood, and we had this barrel and we didn't know what to do with it. We wanted to do a Brazilian double oak, but we kept smelling it, and it reminded me of a Nicaraguan cigar. And that particular cigar was something that it had the spice, it had the cinnamon, it had that clove characteristic that I had historically with that. And then, that's whenever our, quote unquote cigar batch was born. And the very first time we ever paired it was with the Melanios from Oliva. And then we kind of went forward this time around, and, we invited everyone to come out and have this like unique experience, because every guy's house or every person's house, as a cigar company, you guys have, everything under the moon, from fillers, wrappers, the whole 9 yards, and how this is going to build So we're really excited to see what you guys come up with for this particular pairing, but also what's coming out as the Cigar Rye is approaching a week from tomorrow. So hopefully we'll see one of these show up and see how it pairs out. And we're really excited.
Yeah.
Well, you know where to send it, or you can just have Josh bring a bottle. We can definitely do it, or we can come out to you guys. That'd be a fun trip out there. Do a special podcast out there with you guys in person. If you have a place for us to light up cigars and also drink, I think you might find a spot on the farm there.
We'll have, and I'm not joking. Again, we had 400 tickets sold within the hour, and then, it's really nice just to be able to sit down, enjoy a glass of whiskey, and just, people just share and the stories, and they trade cigars. It's a really great community that we're around in the cigar community and in the whiskey world. So being able to have that camaraderie and that conversation started, that's why I wanted you to come out here and just, have that conversation, because people just love to know more and they dig down deeper. And that's why, Thursday night, it's going to be a awesome conversation, and hopefully continue on the tradition of just good friends, good people, good whiskey, good cigars, and good banter at the end of the day.
For those listening, I mean, you guys are sold out. Obviously, you already said that for this time around. Is this a reoccurring event going forward? Is this in the works as far as this is a quarterly, an annual thing? What are you guys looking at as far as that goes? And also, is it invite only, or how do people that might be interested in joining find out about new events coming out on your guys' property there? Like,
yeah, keep an eye. We have an email list that we email out to. We have a whiskey club as well, and a group on Facebook. Those three things are where you want to look for the information. We're very blessed, knock on wood, for people to sign up super, super, super quickly. But particular cigar batch, this year we did it twice. We'll hopefully do it again twice next year. Okay. And hopefully we'll do one around Derby, maybe add a third kicker in while people are in town, and really do something really, really special with that event.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
It's in the works.
And going forward, it's just, the whiskey community kind of got away from it, but the pairings, and just like the terroir that we're talking about in whiskey or wine, happens in cigars. And that's what I'm, really excited about.
And in the future too, we love to have these events kind of after hours, have everybody up. We have really nice kind of patio stage area that we can have a little band play. We really enjoy, just like we said, having that conversation, be able to taste fun products with people, and just experience kind of who we are, because each and every person that ever walks through the distillery, it's almost like another friend that we make, and another connection that we have out there in the industry. And at the end of the day, everybody being able to come back together, kind of have a conversation over a glass of whiskey, being able to choose out the cigar of choice, which is going to pair well with it, is something we want to look forward to in the future. And whether it's the cigar batch, or even if we invite some fellow friends up to come out and actually pair maybe some different cigars with maybe some releases we have coming up, or finding specific barrels we would feel like would complement certain times a year, certain events, and everything, is something fun that we're looking forward to doing in the future more often.
Yeah, and we can't wait to, again, it's something that, the whiskey community and the cigar community are so intertwined, but we just want to be that avenue that everyone can get together and enjoy, what everyone loves. So.
Well, you guys always, when you guys hopefully will start distributing to Ohio, which is not currently happening, correct?
Yeah, we're Ohio is a very hard state to get into. As you guys
we're aware of that. We're very aware of that. Yeah.
Maybe one of these days. We're excited to have the opportunity if it presents itself. But Ohio historically has been one of the more challenging states to get your product in. But there's a lot of people in Ohio that have supported us from the very, very get-go. So we want to. That's the thing.
We know we have a great network of people as well. So hopefully, I got to talk to a certain individual, Bob. What's going on? I think some of the powers that be owe him some favors. Anyways, but in the meantime, as you guys do, if you ever venture out to Ohio, if you have a meeting out here, you have a garage to drink some whiskey and smoke some cigars on a cul-de-sac in the Columbus area. So you guys are always welcome out here. Josh will show you the way to go.
That's what I said. I said it to Christian in one of our first meetings. I said, man, you ever passing through Columbus, or if we can make Columbus a stop on the way up north. Because at the time he was traveling up there.
It's a lovely two-car garage.
And
a studio.
I definitely want to
It's a
get him on the
studio.
podcast and would love to be a guest on that day. But I mean, it was crazy. It was by happenstance because I had in the bourbon sharing community that I was in, a guy came over and we were tasting a couple of different bourbons and he brought this Starlight pick that he had. And it was, forgive me, I'm not going to know exactly what it was, but it was a little higher char at the time. And I just really took a liking to this. And so in my travels, I had just got Indiana and I was going out to Evansville, Indiana. And on my way back, I was like looking on the map and I was like, all right, Starlight's right there. I said, I'm going to just stop by, see, what's happening. This was coming up on the eve of what was going to be the first, cigar batch release and cigar event that you guys were doing. And I stopped in and the Huber farm, for anybody that hasn't been there, is just absolutely amazing.
Sounds amazing.
I mean, you pull in and as Christian said, very small town. I stopped at Starlight Coffee House, and I later asked Christian, like, "What's this about? Is this you guys?" Or he's like, "Yeah, it's a distant cousin, something."
He said there's like less than 1,000 people out there.
Yeah. So I make my way.
Everyone knows everyone,
and I go into the house where they sell the bourbon. I don't know what you guys call that. The gift shop.
Yeah, the gift shop barn. Yeah,
the gift shop, if you will. And I'm nobody. I'm just asking that. Yeah, there's this guy Christian. I don't know if he's around. And I think it was
dropping.
It was like 5 o'clock. Everybody's closing down, and she's like, "Well, let me see." And then Christian just happens to walk by, and I'm like, "Hey, dude, I'm Josh Bentley, Montecristo. What's up, man?" And we just hit it off right then. He took time. We went in the Rick house. We had a tasting. I don't know, Christian. We spent 2 hours. I mean, he sat with me until 7, and just the passion.
Yeah,
I mean,
we've seen that tonight. Obviously,
you've been able to see it from both of them, and incredible. But when it comes down to it, we're just students, right? Yeah. We're just learning, and the same thing with tobacco. We got to talk about tobacco and how it interacts and how it pairs well with with the whiskey, and just really hit it off. And I gave him some cigars, and then I was able to bring a couple people from my company, and we went there and spent a lot more hours and had a great time with the family, and it was really a great time. So I appreciate that, guys, and that was so awesome.
We appreciate you stopping by. I mean, it's awesome to get to know you, the company, and the history. I mean, I wouldn't have been anywhere. I would have never been educated without people like you to sit down with me with the actual pairings. Again, it's one of those things where you learn from the best and you keep moving your way forward, and it's just an awesome collaboration that we have going back and forth together.
It was, man. It was cool.
That's a great segue.
Yeah.
I could have naturally done it, but I just like calling it out.
There you go.
It's like
After an
explaining
hour.
a joke.
Yeah.
In the interest of time, I know Christian, you're interested in this. I don't know if everyone is here, but we're smoking this Montecristo Epic 12. Which, have they smoked this?
They haven't yet.
So next Thursday they will.
Next Thursday they will each have one in their hands.
Is there a cigar sponsor for this event, or are you featuring cigars to go with the cigar blend?
Yes, we are. So we have a wide range between everyone. Oliva has the Melanio, the V series. Of course, I don't know what you're going to be bringing, but you're going to have something epic coming in. I'm for sure. If it's the Epic 12, which I'm really excited about trying. And then
the Epic 12.
I don't know what Garrett from Davidoff is bringing yet. He will have something. Yeah, so he'll be bringing something as well. And again, we just do it as a collaboration where I give everyone a little, half bottle of 375 of the Cigar Bash. I'm like, here, go with your friends, smoke some good cigars. Which one ever comes out as the winner from your house, bring that up, and then we'll have that conversation with everyone.
Hell, we'd be good at that, Steve.
Yeah, I can't make it. Josh did, and you guys also invited us next Thursday, so I need a little more notice. Got a really busy dance schedule, you know what I mean? Let's talk about the Montecristo Epic. If you guys, obviously, you want to stick around, I know you guys are interested in this cigar.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you guys will smoke it.
Yep.
Am I being presumptuous here?
No, absolutely not. No.
Josh will save a couple.
So this is brand new. The Montecristo Epic Vintage 12.
The Epic series has been out since.
The Epic series has been out since 07, I want to say.
Well, the Epic one, like the yellow, is an 07 because it has some 07 crop in there.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's been out for quite some time. Then you had the red, which was the Epic 2 for us, the layman's, you know, as far as that goes, is that the Epic 2, different blend. And then there was this dormancy for quite some time, right? I mean, this sat, right? The yellow was readily available. The red was in and out, if you will. And it was like re-released and then all that stuff. Cause this is some tougher tobacco to be consistent with the product. And then just this year, we hear that Montecristo is coming out with the Epic 12 as the third release, to my knowledge. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. So now you've got the Epic 12, which is the official word as far as the name of the cigar, but it has quickly been known as the Epic Blue.
Epic Blue. Yep.
Yeah. So there you go. There's your intro.
Yes, absolutely. So what we're smoking tonight, Montecristo Epic 12, or the Epic Blue as we know it. Just a phenomenal cigar of very well-aged tobacco, 7 to 8 years old. The crop was the 2012 crop, which is where it derives its name from, believe it or not. And these are exclusive tobaccos that are exclusive to Montecristo, to Altadis, grown from and put together, blended by the Grupo de Maestros, who are a group of master rollers and blenders that blend some of our best blends.
The cream of the crop. This is like the top batch of people with Altadis, correct?
So yes, you are correct.
Factories.
The group has over 300 years of experience.
And that's combined. How many people?
Roughly 8.
Yeah.
8 people over 300 years. So
8 guys.
Yeah, you're looking at about 40 years experience each one.
Raphael is working closely with them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. It's putting these blends together to find this epic cigar, if you will, right?
Okay. It's not going to go away.
It's not going to. It's not going to. And so what we're smoking tonight, Dominican origin. An Ecuadorian Sumatran wrapper with Dominican binder and Dominican fillers. And so the blend just is unique. And I feel like when I'm on the podcast or in general, we can overuse this unique word. But truly it is. And why it is because right now the industry has been much like bourbon, right, is leaning towards the higher proofs, right, and you know, the more peppery, the strong finish bourbons. The industry is kind of right now leaning towards Nicaraguan tobacco, and the
hottest region.
It is, and this gives us something different.
So, what's the makeup? I'm sorry.
So the makeup again is a Dominican filler and binder with a very lush Ecuadorian Sumatran wrapper.
So what part of the cigar derives the 2012 crop?
The fillers, the binder.
Yeah. All right, so filler and binder from the 2012.
Using exclusive Pilatico tobacco, which for those of you in the industry have heard before, we've come out with a couple of cigars that utilize this Pilatico tobacco.
Do you still make the Pilatico?
So we don't make it, but it's grown at the Menendez farm exclusively for us.
Yeah. That was a great smoke.
Yeah. The Pepe Mendez, I believe, is what you're referring to. And so this utilizes some of that. The Montecristo, the 80th, anniversary, utilize some Pilatico tobacco, and it's just very, very distinct. And so what we get in this cigar is a medium-bodied, medium plus cigar. We were talking about it today, as a matter of fact,
Yeah.
and I characterize it as a little bit more mellow. And this is in comparison to the tobaccos that we talked about today, that are a little bit more prevalent, that are a little bit more popular. That spice, right? That black pepper that kind of clogs up your throat a little bit. The strength of the tobacco, utilizing the ligeros, the leaves on the top of the tobacco plant that give the most strength because they get the most sunlight. And this is kind of a different take on that. It's full flavored,
very much so,
but it's a little bit more medium bodied to the everyday smoker. And I really enjoy.
So you're utilizing a little bit more of that Viso and Seco tobacco?
I would say.
Okay.
I would say.
Yeah, say more Seco for sure. I mean, this is very, very flavorful. So when I was talking to you about this, Josh, and I agree completely. Just when I came into the industry, and you came in roughly around the same time, so this was like 2012, working in the industry, but smoking before that, like 2000, like late 2000s, right? Mid to late 2000s. And just the trend, to you guys talking about all this stuff with how you have, developed in the Indiana, state, as far as that goes, is that this is something in Nicaragua, tobacco, just everything was just going during this. It wasn't necessarily it wasn't the first cigar boom, clearly, but it was people getting back into it a little bit. And now we're experiencing a big cigar boom. And the direction of the industry is much like you were saying, the Nicaragua, the fuller bodied stuff. And I'm seeing it from my viewpoint, and I don't know about your vantage point, is that it's getting back to the more the essence of just cigars in general. So now it's broadening back out. So it's kind of what you guys might be seeing as well, with maybe as far as it goes, is that it's not just barrel proof. It's not just, you guys are doing, like we talked about, like the fruity, like you're going back to some of the basics of it. So now we've brought a lot of people into the bourbon and the whiskey world. We've brought a lot of people into the cigar world, and we've just experienced in the last 18, 24 months, another cigar boom for obvious reasons, in the United States, everywhere else, is that people are at home. They're looking at these, because it was almost put in front of their face, even during a pandemic. It's like now we're going back into these leisure things because you're at home.
Yeah.
And so now we're coming back out of it. But I had to, when I smoked this the first time, and I know you've got some more information on this, is I had to almost retrain myself. I'm not always a big Dominican cigar, based smoker. And there's a misconception in our industry where, with bourbon, for you guys, it's about mash bill, it's about, the barrels and everything else. Is you go away from, I like Nicaraguan tobacco. Yeah. Or someone will say something in the cigar industry is that, well, I don't really like Montecristos. And it's like, what have you had? Well, I tried one time and I didn't really like it. And it's like, well, which one was it? I don't remember. And you're like, okay, well, let's reset here a little bit. You know what I mean? So Montecristo is a great example of the fact that there's this wide portfolio, and then you introduce Altadis, which uses a lot of the same factories, farms, and your resources, that if it has a Montecristo label on it, a Romeo label on it, an Upman label, or so on, there's so much out there. And these special projects that you guys do, when I smoked it myself, and I feel like I probably speak for a lot of cigar smokers out there, is that you get on this path of you're smoking similar stuff. You guys use AJ Fernandez a lot. He's one of the hottest hands as well in the industry, along with Plasencia and other companies you guys use, along with your own factories and farms and the Grupos de Maestros. Is you get in this almost a rut without realizing you're in a rut. Mm-hmm. And so when I smoked this cigar the first time, it wasn't what I'm used to smoking anymore. Honestly, it's not. Yeah, it's not. And so, revisiting it tonight with a great bottle, it's a entirely different experience. And it's interesting to me that you guys come out and you've got it's going back to, I feel like, the roots of where Montecristo started, and you guys have done this whole project with AJ, where a lot of your recent release, Montecristo Nicaragua, you had the 1935 which was a phenomenal smoke, which is similarly priced. And in the industry of cigars, and I feel like you guys probably would really relate to this, is that you look at two cigars and it's similarly priced, and you're like, well, this is what I know I like, and this one I'm not quite sure about based on the blended tobacco. And you automatically, immediately become biased, right?
Yeah.
So like the 1935 came out for you guys with Montecristo, and then a year later or so, this comes out, the Epic 12, and I'm smoking it. And even initially, like the first time I smoked it, I'm like, well, if I'm going to spend, upper teens towards $20 for a cigar, I'm going to buy something that I know I like. Smoking this a second time is really what I feel like a lot of people don't allow themselves to do, because now you're doing it with a fresh state of mind. You might be doing it with, it's like, I'm not comparing this, I'm more objective. And I think that's what you guys have done with this.
Yeah, that's a great description, Steve. I think you're right. And I think you hit the nail on the head, because, when it comes to a cigar, when it comes to a bourbon, right, if you had a bad experience, right, and what I mean by, let me qualify what a bad experience is. You didn't care for that bourbon. You didn't care for that cigar. Anytime that happens, you have to give it a second try, right?
Always.
Right? Yeah, I mean, you have to at least smoke 2 cigars to say, hey, I don't really care for that. You have to at least drink 2 of that same bourbon to say, hey, that's not what my palate desires, right?
I like you say at least.
At least.
I think that's accurate and generous.
Yeah,
I feel like you need to have at least
3 times, 2 to 3 times
Yeah.
before you can say, hey, I'm not a fan. And going back to this cigar, I think is a perfect example. The first time that I lit up this cigar and I got to try it, I was drinking a 6-year malted rye, and phenomenal blend. And so when it came to tonight's pairing, and I was going over a little bit last minute with Steve because it was yesterday. And I called up Steve on the on the phone, and I said,
"Planned for months."
Steve, we have planned this release and this podcast for months. But when it came to what we're going to be pairing it with, I, being the guest on the podcast, always like to bring something special, bring something different.
You're not even a guest tonight anymore. You realize that, right?
Okay.
You're just the third guy. These guys are the guests.
There you go. Just another guy.
You just got demoted.
That's
the third host.
No, that's all
You're
right.
the third host.
That's right. I
Go
love
ahead.
it.
I'm sorry.
I love it. But as I said to Christian before, I said, hey man, I've been a guest, a member on this podcast, a host on this podcast before. I'd love to have you on if we do get the chance. And so I was at home and I went downstairs into the limited amount of bottles that I have right now because I'm still in the moving process of all of my bourbons, and they're over at my father-in-law's house. And long story short, anyways, I was talking to Steve and I said, man, I really would like to bring along a bottle of Starlight, because first off, they hadn't heard about Starlight yet. They hadn't tasted anything from Starlight. And I've been on a Starlight kick. And so
now I see why.
I said, Steve, I've got this bottled in bond. I've got a rye orphan barrel. What should I bring? And we were going back and forth a little bit. And Steve's like, bring the bourbon. I said, all right, bottle and bond. It goes right along with the colors, right? That's the right. Epic blue, the blue label on there. And a long story, long story, really short. I was at a liquor store in Louisville, and it was before I was coming out to see Christian. And I said, man, I've never seen this bottle and bond before. I said, what do you think? And he said, all right. Just come on to the distillery and, we'll see. And, this ended up being one of the bottles that I went home with, which was super awesome. And now I get to share it with you guys on the podcast, which was super special.
Would you pay for this?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Christian, can you tell us the price point on the bottled and bond?
Depending on which state you're in, because distributors can mess with it. We're in the 50s. Now, that's generically everything that comes out from us. We're $50.99 for single barrels, bottle and bond. That's just kind of where they normally land at from us. But as you know, some distributors take a fun little pop.
I think it's just a little bit higher in Kentucky.
Yeah, but what's the orphan barrel? The orphan barrel rye. What was that?
Fun.
So the orphan bottles that we have in our retail. So it's a really cool project that we have because most distributors don't take what we call broken cases. So if we're bottling a single barrel, if we don't end on a perfect 6-bottle case, if it's 3 bottles, if it's 2 bottles, we can't sell those to a distributor. Most of them don't take it. So we take them up to our retail and we take the bottom label off so you guys can't see who it's actually picked by. So that way, yeah, great pallets in the industry. But we take that off just so you guys can't see because they're pretty much orphans. They get kicked out of the family. They get pushed off to the side. But that gives you an idea of, some of the products that we might not even release in retail. And that gives you the opportunity. And they always change based on what we're bottling that day. So it depends if you guys, again, you're invited Thursday night to come on down. But depending on the day you show up is going to be what you're going to see. So yeah, we had a VDN, a Vino de Naranja barrel. We had 3 bottles come out this morning. I think we had a bourbon, 3 bottles come out as well. So it kind of just depends.
So it's pricier, is my point. That's why I said do this one, because I feel like you can get this again. The orphan you can't get.
Yeah, special.
Well,
You're
there was
special.
only, like you said, there was only about
whatever.
2,600 bottles of this. So
I know. I'm just. That's why I said bring this. We'll have to save an orphan barrel for another time.
That's right. That's right.
This is not the last time.
Gives us something to look forward to.
Hey,
Really
and I want to give you guys, hopefully when you're down there, I'll get you a cigar batch for these guys to try too. Because that cigar batch, I think, is going to be right up your alley.
Phenomenal, yeah.
We have
Yeah.
a Ryan.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we actually announced that yet. A little sneak peek for the guys that are listening, though. There might be a rye and a very limited amount of bourbon. We might release both of them out to try on Thursday night, just FYI, just as a sneak peek. I don't think we told anybody that yet.
Well, yeah, cat's out of the bag here.
Yeah, but it's something that is, I think you guys will really enjoy understanding how, flavor profiles in this would work. I mean, it really is a great pairing with it, depending on what you're pairing it with. So, like you mentioned, some cigars will not work with this product, but that's the fun thing for you guys to have fun with. The bottle itself, it will change and adapt depending on your mood and what actual cigar you're pairing with. Again, if it's Ecuador, if it's Dominican, if it's Nicaraguan, again, like I know we're in the United States, but if it's a Havana, like they're all going to express the fruitiness and the tertiary characteristics in the whiskey differently, and they'll highlight different things differently. And that's the crazy thing about it. And that's why I give it to you guys from all the different houses to say like, hey, go have fun with this. Go express what you want. Again, like you said, the maestros would even have fun, like just tasting, everything's different. Every single farm's different. Even the season's different. And that's what we try to highlight with this product.
That'd be pretty cool. Montecristo Starlight cigar.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not saying, but
Steve,
I'm saying.
had you heard of Starlight before Josh talked about it?
I had heard of it, but being in Ohio, I have not seen it. So it's just like, I know you had seen it on some of the Instagram stuff. A couple of other listeners have and viewers have mentioned it in Ohio. Obviously, like, even Sean Anderson, who's in Tennessee.
Yeah.
He mentioned on here, he just commented, I think I've seen their bottle in the store I go to, but have not purchased one. Now he's listening tonight. He's an avid listener to the podcast, great supporter of the podcast. He's even been on the show when he was in town. But then, I just said, do it. And he said, it's that whole never heard of or not familiar. So ... And then he says, next time I'll pull the trigger. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, people just haven't necessarily, and he's in Tennessee and he really hadn't he's seen it. He's heard of it. But again, you guys getting out there to different states and growing the word of what you've got out there. And then you have, obviously big proponents of what your product is, like Josh Bentley in the cigar world. Now he's going around talking about it, and that's why we're doing it tonight.
Yeah, there's an Instagram page that I follow that I know has done at least one barrel pick with you guys. and I know they rave about you guys, and so I was like, man, I kind of wish this was available in Ohio, just so I could get to try it. And and they're not one of those like bourbon groups, like bourbon hunters and traders and stuff like that. That group's whole purpose is just making sure like people don't overpay on what is available out there.
We might have to on the down low is work with one of the states that you're hooked up with, Josh, or the listeners out there, to do maybe our first. There's a couple distilleries. We've been talking about this. We've been doing this podcast for 3 years, and we've got a community of about 1,500 members right now. It's a separate page, which I hope you guys join. It's Bourbon and BS community page on Facebook. But there's been a lot of talk of doing our first barrel pick as a group and getting a kind of a preemptive, everyone's in type thing. So, you guys are talking about this. My mind's just spinning right now. I'll put Josh in charge of it.
Well, I mean,
you don't have anything to do.
So
do you?
Cool. The opportunities that lie before us. And as I said, before tonight, when you just go to the Huber farm and you see that, how cool would it be to be able to go down there, do that possibly on a Wednesday night if time allows, and then do the podcast at the Huber family farms. I mean, that would be super neat too.
Matt Stiles already says, and he's done plenty of picks. He says, I'm in for a BS pick.
There we go.
And you got Sean Anderson, who I was just mentioning, from Tennessee. He's planning on just bringing a hog out. I don't know if you got a place to do a hog roast.
Oh yeah. There's 850 acres you guys can have fun on, but I'm telling you, on Thursday, come on down and we'll taste you on some barrels and stuff, and hopefully it'd be really cool for you guys to do an actual cigar pairing with whatever bottle you come out with. 100%. That way everyone can open that bottle and have some fun. That's what I wish more groups would get into that, and that's what I always said to all cigar. That's what I try to do, and it's just kind of difficult as a distillery to sell it as a bundle. But, having a single barrel paired with a particular cigar, I think would be awesome for you guys to do like that. Fun.
Yeah, that's a cigar. I'm sorry. I feel like we get these.
That's all right, man. This is what this night's about, man.
I know. All right. Before we glance over this, the blue that you gave us, and so I got to talk about dates before you leave tonight or tomorrow if the night gets away from us. But we're going to try to do a dinner with Tinder Box here in Columbus. Fido Irish Pub is our neighbor, so we have a great relationship, and we can do dinners. And they have it. We're going to do a prime rib dinner, hopefully with the Montecristo Epic 12.
Yeah.
And we can't get this, unfortunately, because it's not available in Ohio. Sorry, guys. We'd love to do it. And once you guys get distribution in Ohio, we'll make sure we get you in as many of our local network as we can. But with this, the whole image behind this cigar is the blue. It's once in a blue moon. Open that box, if you will, Nate, again, just to kind of show this event kit. This is a influencer kit. This is a special package that they did, and I'm gonna try to highlight us here. Gorgeous box, same blue, and this is something that comes with. This is an event. This is something that if you go to a Montecristo Epic 12, correct?
Yeah.
Event. This is not only available to us, which we are very, very gracious, and thank you for being generous and bringing those with us. But you've got this thing, and the whole story is once in a blue moon. Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you're looking at is a kit. We've come out with some cool swag that goes along with it. The glasses that we're drinking out of tonight are Montecristo Epic branded glasses.
This is a gigantic rocks glass, first of all, and it's got the frosted engraving on there with the Montecristo logo, Montecristo, and Epic underneath. But the kicker of this one is that it has this blue dye in the crystal or whatever in the glass at the bottom of it. So it gives this beautiful look to this glass. It's got a blue base.
Yeah, and someone had messaged me because they saw my glass and they're like, whatever you're drinking looks really, really dark. I'm like, well, that's probably because of the glass.
Yeah. Because
even though you actually have clear glass underneath and it's about a 1/4 inch up, that's actually got that blue frosting. When you actually hold it flat and look at an angle, like it makes the whole bottom of the glass, like you can see on the camera, it makes the entire bottom of the glass look dark like it's just full of whiskey. It's like there's not as much whiskey in the glass as it looks like.
You did have a big pour, just so you know.
Yeah.
Full disclosure.
So we're gonna work on a dinner with Tinder Box and come out, support the dinner. You'll get dinner and then have the opportunity to buy a box or two of the Montecristo Epic 12, and then we'll gift you with some real nice items, including the whiskey glass set.
Yeah, whiskey glasses. You got a Montecristo Epic 12 pen, a
pin, and
pocket square, which Josh
square.
is obviously sporting because he is arguably, debatably the best dressed man in the industry.
That little pocket square,
is
little
that really
lapel
debatable?
pin. That
it's not competition. I'm just saying.
I hope not. But,
I don't think it's that much of a debate.
Is what it is. So some really good things to look forward to. There's some things to come. But yeah, guys, what do you think about the cigar?
Nate, go ahead.
So,
Put you on the spot.
It's not what I was expecting.
This is the first time smoking it. Correct?
This is my first time ever smoking a cigar. Good. Definitely not what I was expecting. Because like Montecristo White Series is, I tell people all the time in the shop, like if I want to start my day with a milder smoke, Montecristo White is my go-to. I absolutely love the flavor. I love the creamy texture of that smoke because of that Ecuadorian wrapper. Espada Esquiro, like 1935. 1935 is my favorite cigar. And this really, when I first lit up and started smoking it, it really surprised me because I've smoked a lot of Dominican cigars, but it's been a while since I've smoked something that had this much Dominican tobacco in it. Because as Steve alluded to, I think the last 10 years, the 2010s, have kind of been dominated by Nicaraguan tobacco.
Yeah, that's good.
And so people have been kind of gravitating towards that fuller body, a lot of spice. But I also found myself loving some Honduran tobaccos as well because they were a little bit more delicate and it was a different type of flavor. And that's what I get with this. This is not a powerhouse type of cigar. Mm-hmm. This is something that is going to be a delicate smoke. And, you know, this is something I think you would maybe, if you wanted to swing it, this is a cigar to be like your first cigar of the day. Because if you smoke too many fuller bodied cigars and then go to this, you may not be able to taste the little nuances of flavor that are in this cigar.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's because of that, 7-8 year old tobacco from the Dominican Republic, which a lot of the Dominican tobacco, especially if you go on the eastern coast of island of Hispaniola, a lot of that tobacco tends to have that lighter characteristic, almost Cubanesque type of characteristic, because it's milder, but it's very delicate flavor. There is flavor there, but it's very delicate. You got to actually pay attention to what you're doing in order to taste the flavors in this cigar.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for what we've been talking about and that dominating flavor that you get out of the Nicaraguan tobaccos and what that Nicaraguan soil brings to the leaf and to the flavor profile of those tobaccos. If you're trying to get that spice, you really have to search for it in this cigar. It's very hard, even on the retrohale. We've talked about a lot about the retrohale. A lot of cigar smokers like to blow that smoke through their nose and get that flavor profile. Not so much. I try to not retrohale a cigar. If I'm smoking it maybe once, twice at max, because I feel like it messes with those sensors, right?
I love it. I can't not
sensory. And
I love the retrohale on this cigar.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I think this is an experience type of a cigar. I think that's what I expect, and I think that's everyone that smokes a cigar. Every bottle, every cigar should have some experience to it. But once, and this is just the type of smoker I am. I don't know if anyone relates to me on this. Is that when you start ponying up a little bit more money for a cigar that is carrying the whole thing with the 12. You know, it's, the fact you have this vintage tobacco in there, it's not your everyday smoke. I'm not expecting anyone to go out there and purchase a cigar that is, what's the retail of this Toro? Do you know
17,
that?
$18.
17. So on the shelf in Ohio, you're looking at $18, $19 for a Toro. This is not, if you smoke 2-3 cigars a day, you're not going to just be like, all right, give me 3 of those. Most people, myself included. So this is an experienced cigar. This is not something that you say first thing in the morning because you're fresh, is the way I take that, Nate.
That's how I meant it. Yes.
But for me, it's like, this is an experience thing, not only like talking with you guys about all this stuff, but it's having it with a bottle maybe, or at the end of the day that you're sitting there and you're able to reflect. This is more of an experience type of a cigar where you are trying to not only try something new, maybe different, but it's not your everyday smoke.
No.
If you're looking for an everyday smoke, this is not the one for you, because this is something that you want to do. There's a lot of bottles of whiskey. You guys actually probably put some of that stuff out there as well, where it's not necessarily your daily drinker. This is something that you want people to experience. This is like, you get a bottle. Yeah, we may kill this bottle tonight because there's 3 of us and then we're featuring it. And that's how it works on this podcast, because we drink as we talk. But this is something that even some of your guys is like the cigar bottle that you guys are talking about. It's not necessarily something that, oh, what am I going to drink tonight? Well, I'll just crack this bottle tonight. You want to have an experience.
Yeah.
Whether it's be talking with friends, being around, or being by yourself, whatever, celebrating, stuff like that. The Epic 12, I think, is something that, again, being mostly a Nicaraguan tobacco smoker just on a everyday basis for me, and Montecristo puts out some great everyday smokes. But even like you mentioned, the 1935, you get up to that price point where you're the high teens, $20 or even higher than that. It's not this is something that you want to really dive into.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that, as I've been smoking this tonight, and we'll get into the ratings very quickly because we want to round out part 1 here, but this is something that is built again, for me. The first time I smoked it, it was a random everyday, day in the shop where I'm sitting there just working the retail side of it. And, I'm helping customers. I'm going back, setting it down, relighting it and everything like that. That's not the type of smoke or cigar this is. This is something you want to sit down, enjoy, and really experience. And I think that's something that some people might look at as churching it up, talking it up, or whatever. But there are experiences that you can have with cigars and bottles of bourbon, or you guys brandy and all that stuff. It's not something that, hey, it's happy hour. Which Starlight brandy are we going to drink? It's like, oh, let's do but it was 20 some years. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, let's just do that. Let's do that. Let's put some, Coke in there. You know what I mean? Let's have some cocktails, throw some ice in there, and all that stuff. That's not this cigar.
No,
this is a cigar that you should experience because it does build. It is a lot of subtleties to it, but it's very enjoyable.
Yeah.
With that being said, I do want to round this out at this point because we're an hour and a half plus in. We had a couple people. Is there a part 2 tonight? Yeah, it's coming. It's coming. Yeah. This is going to be one of those longer nights. All right, everyone. So with you guys, the Hubers, with the Starlight Distillery, bottled and bond. Again, this is the currently available bottle for those of you that are in states that have this available, which unfortunately for a lot of our viewers in Ohio or listeners in Ohio, you can't get this here in Ohio. But this is something that if you can get your hands on it, go over to Kentucky. Sean in Tennessee, apparently you guys are available in Tennessee. Obviously, Indiana. Yeah. If you guys can, if you're in the Ohio area or in a state that carries it, find these bottles. What do you guys rate this, including the one that stands for the B in the code? Out of 10, this is what we do it. Whiskey, cigar, and pairing. There's 3 ratings. You guys give your rating on the whiskey since you haven't smoked the cigar yet, but it's out of 10, 10 being the best. And then we'll do our ratings out of 10, 3 ratings, whiskey, cigar, and then the pairing. You guys go ahead.
Well, starting off too, just as our product, I was really happy with the blend, how it took to what we're doing to it. And it's really exciting for what we're doing. I think we made a mature blend at 4.5 years. But I always got to say this whiskey itself too, I always like to say that's my perfect 7.5 out there because it's a perfect for where it is, but I'm super approachable. Yeah, it's approachable. It's what we are. we're 25 and 23. There's some stuff I wanted to critique about it, and I wanted to, fill some gaps in it. But I'm super proud of where it came out to, and it's something that as our whiskey matures too, that's when I think that that rating will go up for me personally. I was super excited about the blend, but I know you're the one who blended it, so
yeah. So I mean, overall, it was a really kind of fun experience getting to bring together that kind of flavor profile, as Christian mentioned, as bottled and bond. And something that we knew it was a limited number of bottles, but still kind of a little bit of a larger release for ourselves as well, bringing together these kind of different flavor profiles, as I mentioned, showcasing some of the Canton cooperage that we use within there, giving some that kind of nice kind of intensity in the mouthfeel. That's all air-dried wood, so you get a really nice, elegant tannin within the mouth. It's not harsh, clinging, and you just get that nice, like, subtlety of kind of char, but then that really nice sweetness there that we talk about retronasal for the alcohols as well. But as you breathe out, you get some of that more fruitiness in the back as well. And like Christian mentioned, that 7.5, it's just a really, I mean, we thought it was a really great kind of mesh together of flavors with that. And that bottled and bond that we like to keep nice and sweet, fruity, and approachable as a product.
And you're talking to the wrong people we critique our whiskey like crazy. First off, you'll never get better.
I absolutely love it.
We're never going to be the one that's, I mean, I don't think we ever rated I don't think I've ever seen anything 95 or above for us, just as a family member. We've had a few 92s. The highest I ever remember was that 94 that we put out. But we're crazy because at the end of the day, we're still learning and adapting. We make great whiskey, but I think we can keep making it better and better and better. And that's the thing. I don't think you can ever be truly a master at your trade. You're trying to hit a moving target within the whiskey community with people's palates always changing.
But you're always learning. You're always learning from yourself. And there's always things that we always kind of say to each other here. We're making the best whiskey of each day here. Yeah. And whatever that style is going to be, fermentations are going to be differently. The still is going to come over differently during the course of the run. How the temperature holds consistent, those flavors that we're finding are always going to be changing. And so for us, I mean, it's really looking at that and going with each other, kind of bouncing ideas back and forth. Okay, what's our entry proof? What cooperages do we have in stock right now? And how are we going to craft this blend so 4, 6, 8, 10 years down the road, what do we want this whiskey to be? What are we feeling? What are we kind of meshing this whiskey to be? And then, like we mentioned, just kind of keeping up on it, kind of tasting over time, seeing kind of where we always kind of rate things on the basis of what are the aromatics, what's the mouthfeel, what's the finish, and how can we balance that all together?
So, like better term, that's where we're at with that.
You guys are harsh critics of yourself, that's for sure. And just for the record, is this the first bottled and bond product that you have worked on?
Our first bigger batch. We've came out with small little 2-barrel blends of bottle and bond, but this was our first relatively, I want to use that in quotations because it was only 10 barrels.
No, but this is the first mass produced, if you will, project. Yep. Okay. Josh, don't sit back. You're next.
No.
All right, so your ratings: whiskey, cigar, and the pairing out of 10, 3 ratings.
Yeah. The whiskey. I mean, excellent. As Steve said, you guys are harsh on yourselves, and that's great. We are. I shouldn't say we. I am a little bit more flagrant in my rating scale, and of course biased. I think that this pairing tonight, I think we hit it on the head. I'm glad that we did the bottled and bond with this. The whiskey, the bottled and bond bourbon. I mean, it comes off and it's great. It's got, a very sweet, aroma right off the nose. It's very fruit forward. As Christian alluded to before, I would put, an 8.7, to it.
Very specific.
I think it goes just excellent with the cigar that I'll get to here in a minute. The cigar, again, going back to the uniqueness of this cigar, this blend that we've put together, something special. that I think that we've come out with something different from a lot of the cigars that we have released in the past 8 to 6 months. And so, the cigar, I give the cigar right along that line an 8.8 and 8.9. I think you get a lot of the toasted, like a toasted almond off of it, like almost like a Maricona almond from it. A lot of woodiness, that I pick up, and a little bit of that like milk chocolate on the finish. And so for the pairing itself, I think the pairing goes great because the bourbon just accentuates. When I take a sip of that and that sweetness and what it does with that Ecuadorian Sumatran wrapper, which I'm biased because I love the Ecuadorian Sumatran wrapper.
You love it.
I really do. And you get it accentuates those toasted notes. That you get from it, and you get a lot of that fruit forward, like almost like a cherry, right off of the head, I think. And so I would give this an 8.9 and 9 on the pairing together.
Brings more out of it.
Yeah.
Okay, Nate.
So I had written down earlier. I was going to lead in, like, when it comes to the whiskey, like you've drank full body whiskeys, you've smoked full body cigars. Here's delicate. But I think both the whiskey and the cigar are delicate because they're not overpowering.
Right.
They're not trying to blow out your palate. The whiskey, I'm going to give the whiskey a 9 because I think this is one of the smoothest.
You guys haven't watched the podcast before. That's a high rating from Nate, by the way.
Yeah, I'm known as the Russian judge.
Yeah.
I give this a 9 because this is one of the smoothest bottled and bond whiskeys I've had. And I get this nice crisp apple on the nose. And then on the finish, I do get some of that rye spice. I get a little bit of that wheat, but it's not overpowering like what we think about with traditional wheated bourbons, like, say, a Weller or a Maker's Mark. The wheat flavors are a little bit more delicate there. But there's this nice rye spice that's there, but it's not trying to blow out your palate.
Mm-hmm.
It's not trying to light your tongue on fire. It's just allowing you to know that that's there. I think, like I said, this is one of the more complex but smooth bottled in bonds that I've had. So I was really impressed with it coming across the palate as delicate as it was for being 100 proof. And especially with it only being a 51% corn mash bill, it wasn't overloaded on sweetness.
Right.
Because we've had that sometimes. So no, everything's blended there just to be a nice balance. Cigar, I give this cigar an 8. I like the cigar. Like I said earlier, 1935 is my favorite Montecristo. This is completely different. It's very pleasant. It's very easy to smoke, but I love the retrohale on this cigar because the retrohale has a lot of spice, and I don't get that on the palate. So the first time I retrohaled this cigar and got all that spice, I was kind of taken back because I was not expecting that. So it's very, I think it's very difficult to do, to get that delicate flavor on the palate, but then a lot of spice on the retrohale. That is, I don't think that is an easy task whatsoever. But when you're talking about a group that has over 300 years of blending experience, of course they can come up with something like that. As far as the pairing, I give the pairing a 9 because as delicate as they both are, they go very well together. On the podcast, I've talked about it before. I've had a lot of pairings where I will drink the whiskey is very good. I will smoke the cigar is very good. But if I do them immediately back to back, whiskey then cigar, it just kind of overloads my palate. Mm-hmm. And there's just too much going on, and it just kind of blows the palate out a little bit. I think because this cigar is so delicate, when you drink the whiskey and then smoke the cigar, it enhances the flavor of the cigar on the palate, but it's not overwhelming.
Gotcha. High ratings from Nate Hale over here. Sean Anderson says, Nate giving it a 9. You did get there, boys. You guys don't know, but he is a harsh critic. So for me, and I want to thank, I've been scrolling down there, Tinder Box at Easton for sponsoring this, getting this all together. Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. The Montecristo Epic 12 is available. Also, Altadis USA, which is Josh Bentley himself. He is the representative. So Montecristo is one of their great lines. And you guys have been a great supporter of the podcast. We appreciate that. Typically, what Altadis will do, you guys aren't familiar with this, the Hubers there, but this is something that you guys also supply a second featured cigar. So are we smoking another one of these Montecristo Epics for part 2?
I had something else in mind.
You always do.
And I didn't. Yeah.
It's why we love
available.
having Josh.
Yep.
All right. So regardless, but thank you Altadis and Josh for all the support and everything else. BS Cigar Company, also the gold and silver available, all Nicaraguan blends. Those are available as well. And we do have full stock of those. Patreon.com. I want to throw that out there also. You guys are amazing. Patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast. You guys are a huge support of the show, and it really does fuel this going, that love and support on a monthly basis. Again, I'm working on, hopefully by the next episode, we'll have that Venmo available as well, and I'll throw that up on the screen as well. So if you guys don't feel comfortable with Patreon.com, but you guys have a Venmo account, and you want to say, hey, I want to do this amount for this bottle, if you guys can get it, Nate and I will work on getting that bottle, and we'll be direct towards that. And we'll obviously eat I'll eat the taxes on that, when I have to claim that at the end of the year, but we'll work it out. We'll work it out. So thank you guys for the support. The whiskey, this is a treat for me, guys. Not only listening to you, Christian, and hearing after date night. I'm glad date night went well from what we understand. This is fantastic for you joining us as well. But great bottle. This is a great treat. I've really enjoyed it. I'm going to give this bottle, it's unique for a bottled in bond from what I've had recently with that tag on it. You know what I mean? Because that's something that's thrown around a lot in the industry in recent years, I think, in the whiskey world, is that you almost expect, or I expect, I'm not going to speak for everyone out there, you expect a certain type of a taste from a bottled in bond. And as I've been drinking, fortunate to sample bottles that are bottled in bond, I love the fact that you guys throw on there that it's 4.5 years, because it right out of the gate, when you look at the label, you're already setting yourself apart from everyone else that says, 4 years bottled in bond. And that's what everyone registers with as far as what that means is 4 years. And then you learn more about what that means as far as why you did that from the rules, if you will, regulations from 1897. So this is really cool. It is fruitier than I expected. Everything that we've talked about, it's got that fruit front. And then when you poured it, and I hadn't even had a sip, I even mentioned, like, is that apple?
Mm-hmm.
I got that kind of apple fruitiness from it. I don't know if that's what you guys think or not, but that's just the aroma on the table in these massive Montecristo Epic blue glasses. It really just let it that aroma shine just sitting here. So I'm going to give it 8.5 to 9. I mean, it's 8.7. I don't really go that detailed. I'll give it an 8.5 just because, again, I think you guys hit it on out of the park. This is a really enjoyable bottle. I feel comfortable giving it an 8.5 because you guys give it in the 7 range, so I don't feel guilty saying that. A lot of times you give an 8 to 9, and you're like, oh, you didn't like it that much. It's like, no. That's a great rating. I think this is a great one. And based on what you guys are saying, I'm excited to try the next bottle in bond. And as this product grows and you guys really fine tune what you're looking for based on what you have available in those barrels in that 6-month period, I think it's going to just continue to grow as a product. And what your expression is when you bottle it, we'll get that as consumers. And I think that's fantastic. I'm interested to see that. With the cigar, again, I think this is an experienced cigar. This is something that when you throw so again, $18, call it ballpark price tag on a cigar, you don't know what to expect. You can look at the blend, you can look at everywhere online, the reviews and everything else. You can look at the blend breakdown. You can talk to people like Josh. You can even talk to Raphael and some of those, if you're connected, you can talk to the people that blended this and why they chose this blend as the new Epic blend. This is the new release, once in a blue moon, all this marketing behind it. You smoke the cigar, and I encourage people to try it with and without spirits. I think you should try it different times of the day, different days of the week. You know, you guys mentioned also mood. I mean, that is absolutely something. When I had the experience of working on the BS project, we were down in Florida working on this, smoking samples and everything like that. But it was one of those things. It's like, all right, now you take these samples back home and smoke it at different times of the day in your own home climate and everything else. There are differences there. You know, it's not that blending experience, much like you guys probably experience a lot of times. You drink it as you're doing, oh, this is the one. It's like, all right, drink it 6 days from now in the middle of the afternoon when you've been out on the farm and everything else, and you come home and you're like, all right, now pour a glass. Now what do you think? These are all different experiences. The mood in your day does change things. This cigar, I'm going to give for where we're at 8.5 as well, because this is something. For me, I do typically smoke different types of cigars. I'm happy we smoked it tonight because it is an experienced cigar.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, when I smoke it again, my rating might change based on all the factors that we've talked about tonight. Mood, what am I drinking with it? What did I eat that day? Am I in a good mood, bad mood, all that stuff? These all factor into it. But objectively, I give it an 8.5 on that. And that, again, might sound harsh, but again, I think that's a great rating. Yeah. I think it is. So the pairing, I'm going to agree with these guys. And I'm excited to hear what you guys have to think, you know, when you smoke this cigar, when you do drink some of your spirits, what you think. But I'm going to go with 9 on the pairing. So I think this is one of those times that we do a pairing on this show that the cigar and the whiskey on its own, great, fantastic bottle, fantastic smoke. Together, they're even better.
Mm-hmm.
So with you guys talking about that cigar bottle as well, the cigar blend of your whiskey coming out, I'm going to hold Josh accountable for getting us a sample of it because I'm excited to see, and I want to know what cigar he brings with that next time, and what like you were talking about, Christian, of like, you know, what cigar do you think goes best with this from the Altadis portfolio? Not even just Montecristo, but the entire portfolio. And I think that's one of those things that we've seen tonight, that the pairing goes even better together than the bottle or the cigar on its own, even though they are fantastic together. So
yeah, that
being said, I want to thank you guys for taking time out of your night for joining us. That hour-long part one turned into 2 hours, as it tends to do. But guys, cheers. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. Best to you guys. The future is incredibly bright, and hope to have you guys on the show again. Yeah. And we will take you up, hopefully, on that invite out to your guys' facility out there, so we can do a show out there and we can have some fun.
Yeah.
Cheers. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. Those listening live, stay tuned. We're going to take a quick intermission. Stay live. And we'll go into part 2, which is something about human nature. I can't remember what I said. It's just human nature, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Which is great for this topic and this conversation. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you guys.
And scene. So how was date night? We're in the intermission right now.
Oh, it was good. Yeah, I just went for a little dinner. We had like we said, we bottled all day at work, so take a little time after work to decompress. I think we've been we tasted the other day, and we've been kind of full-fledged into harvest now, so our mindset really gets on to grapes and wine and brandy at this point. We've been actually running a bunch of brandy in our big whiskey still here recently to strip it down before we finish it on our Christian Carl still. So when you guys are actually down, or whenever you're down visiting, we'll be full-fledged brandy, so we'll have to taste you on a couple fun brandies that we're doing at the time as well.
And I'm super excited though for next Thursday though. This rye, compared to the bourbons, a full, and you mentioned about the subtle nuances. This rye cigar batch has a lot of hidden. I was trying in actually different glasses, and even the glass like change up from a snifter to the one I had tonight. Like it totally changes this rye aspect on what this whiskey holds. So I'm super excited to get it in people's hands. And, you know, on Thursday, every cigar under the wide blue sky will be there. So it'll be really interesting to see kind of that breakthrough pairing. So we're excited for it.
I got to ask real quick before I don't know. Again, you've been on for 2 hours. I don't know if any of you guys want to stay on for part 2 or not, but I know it can turn into a long night. And when was the last time you guys had a day off? That's one of the things I meant to ask, but it seems like being a part of the family business. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's weekends. I'm assuming, or I'm gathering that you guys really don't have scheduled days off. You take the breaks when you can. Is that accurate? Am I picking this up correctly?
We went to Portugal for, what was it, 10 days. Before that, we took Easter day off. Then we took New Year's Eve. Then we took Christmas Eve. I took a week off in November.
You froze. I don't know if we lost him or not. He's taking a day off right now, apparently.
Christian, you still there?
We lost you, Christian.
Uh-oh.
Happy that happened now, not when we were in part 1. Get him out of here. So kick him, Stu. Is that what it says? He's gone. He gone. Well, take the rest of the night off. All right. Well, if they pop back up, let me know. I'm gonna relieve myself. Ray's out there. Sean's out there. We got a great cigar coming up.
Oh yeah. So Josh, what are we getting ready to light up for part 2? It's
buddy.
It's a blend that we featured, but a little different.
Yes, sir. This is the Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua, and this is the Impromptu.
So it's a figurado.
Yes, yeah. This is a
so we've
had them out to studio audience.
Yeah, so we've had the Aging Room Nicaragua on the podcast before. That was the one that 2 years ago was #1 cigar of the year, and it was specifically in the Torpedo. Was that?
That's correct. The Maestro. Yep.
So the Torpedo was #1 cigar of the year. This is a figurado. So for those who are not familiar with the term figurado, it still has that torpedo head to it, but then it is also going to feature a tapered foot. So it almost comes down to a point on the foot as well. We've had some other cigars that have been figurado shapes. Sometimes you just got to get some people, they'll initially light up a figurado and they're like, oh my gosh, that draw is really tight. I need to cut more off of it because, well, the reason it's so tight is because of how small that foot is initially. Once you get past that foot and actually get into the full diameter of the cigar, the draw is going to open up. So sometimes those people that have cut too much, then once it opens up, it becomes too airy and too light of a draw. So when you're smoking figurado, just because it's tight initially doesn't mean you need to keep cutting on the cigar. You just need to let the cigar burn into the body of it, and it'll open up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, this is really a work of art from Rafael Nadal and AJ Fernandez, and just an excellent cigar. Box pressed figurado, not easy to do.
Oh no!
When it comes to the rolling, rollers. yeah, definitely takes an expert roller to roll. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
So are we.
I haven't smoked this Vitola.
What's the suggested price of
I'd imagine 12, 13 on this.
Yeah.
Similar to so we have at Tinder Box, we have the Torpedo, the Bellicoso, and that's the one that was highly rated, correct? That was the the number one.
Number 196
the Aging Room, Nicaragua Quattro was the Bellicoso. So basically a similar cigar, but it just straight down the pipe there as far as that goes. The foot is straight down. It's not the figurado shape, and that was so $12.95 is where you're looking at in Ohio.
Yeah, I know part one went long, but how often have we had a part one where the depth of knowledge and information given was that high?
I mean, it's great.
Yeah,
it's great. I mean, we've had some great episodes. Part one, I have obviously no problem with going that long. And for those listening, I know Ray's out there. It's the morning where he's at Sean. So we haven't done a long podcast, 3 hours or so. So I'd like to kick into it because we're at 2:09 right now. When you're done, I know you're texting. For those listening live in the intermission right now, Christian's laptop died. Good timing on that for sure. He could have said, hey, I got to go, but I'm just kidding. No, it's great.
Yes, I'm good.
You're good. Hey, you can take that unless you want it in front of you, Nate. Shane, you taking off? All right, bub.
All right.
Let's do this. I mean, until you start commenting. Guys ready?
Mm-hmm.
Get your fancy water. Got enough of it?
Yes, sir.
All right.
High pH.
Got to get that pH balance. Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. We just had a great part one tonight. We had the Huber family joining us from Starlight Distillery, which thank you, Josh, for lining that up. Who do we have on? Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah. And his brother joined us.
Yep.
Yeah. Joined us as well. And great knowledge. Those guys, early to mid 20s, and they know more about distilling than probably most of our listeners and definitely this table.
Yeah. Well, even though they're only 23, 25, they've been doing it for over a decade. So.
Right. Very impressive. Yep. Check out part one if you guys are listening to part two first. If you happen to be listening to part two, click back to part one on the audio or on the video and check that part out. Hope you guys enjoy that. We definitely learned a lot from them and are excited to see what they have coming in the spirit world. They have some great aged brandy, as well as now the whiskey products are just flowing as well. I'd love to try some of their wines. I mean, that's their base, right? Is winery. So looking forward to trying some of that stuff as well. If you're in Ohio, you can't get their products here. So surrounding states, they're very abundant from what I understand. So check them out and support them. It's great. At the end of the episode, obviously we gave some ratings as well. And I got to tell you, if you're just listening to the part two, it did well on the podcast. I mean, definitely the family actually gave the lowest ratings of the whiskey than we did, which is interesting. That's a first as well. Tonight, I want to thank our sponsors, Tinder Box at Easton, Columbus, Ohio, as well as Altadis USA. Josh has been a big supporter of the podcast from the very beginning. Paul Waller as well, who is what's his title now?
Head of sales.
Head of sales. He was in your position when he first started.
Yes.
And supported this podcast. So we appreciate Altadis USA. We are now smoking the Aging Room Nicaragua Figurado size. We smoked the Montecristo Epic 12, which is a brand new release, which is available at our sponsor, Tinder Box at Easton. And I know it's a short supply right now, but hopefully that will get to your brick and mortars near you in the near future.
Yes.
Just supply chain everywhere is definitely something that everyone's dealing with, and the cigar industry is no exception. Be a cigar company. The gold and silver are available now through the Tinder Box at Easton exclusively, along with just a handful of shops as well. But if you're interested in having the gold or the silver, contact Tinder Box at Easton, BS Cigar Company, or you can contact the podcast as well, and we will point you in the right direction. Patreon.com. You guys are amazing. You guys have been a big support. Patreon.com/BourbonBS podcast. There are monthly things, $5, $10, $25. You can do a one-time contribution and cancel it, but you guys have been amazing, and it's really made a difference in getting this podcast out there to you guys. So thank you for supporting, enjoying, share, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Tell your friends about the podcast, because the conversation the night of is probably one of my favorite things. I don't know, Josh, you've been a part of other podcasts. I still think we're a little unique when it comes to this stuff, is that we bring in the community. If you're on Facebook, follow Bourbon and BS Podcast. There's also a page, Bourbon and BS Community page, which again is different than many cigar pages, bourbon or whiskey pages. This is a true community. So we've actually brought together a lot of people that are from different industries, different parts of the country, different parts of the world, that now are friends. And I encourage you guys, if you're listening for the first time, to definitely check out that community page, because there's a lot to be gained from that. Not only learning about cigars and whiskey, but also about this Beyond the BS. This is part 2.
I think one of the great things about the community page is when you say it's not like a lot of other pages, it's not just crotch shots of bottles or cigars.
Right. Absolutely.
There's actual conversation and dialogue about stuff happening.
Absolutely. All right. Part 2. The topic tonight is human nature. We're in a rerun of last year in a lot of ways right now with our country and the world. This is one where I think this is a different take on it, and we can actually apply this to a lot of different aspects of life. And again, this is the part, if you're listening for the first time, this is where we actually kind of, solve problems, if you will, or at least talk about problems and not solve a damn thing. We just talk about it.
No, we solve it. Then when we wake up tomorrow morning, we forgot it.
Yeah, Ray Cheshire says broad subject matter. Well, here we go, Ray, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say out there, Ray Cheshire from Vietnam, who's an avid listener, good friend of ours. So human nature, the topic is, there's the age-old thing, nature versus nurture, and I don't think you need to pick one. Josh, you asked if I could explain that a little bit further. But I'm going to start this with a couple of things. So I was looking into this, and I think this is something that I'm fascinated by. This I posted a post on Sunday, and I was really happy with the fact that, and this is very, very basic for those of you out there, that football's back, right? So we have gotten back to a point where, in my opinion, that we've got some of these things that we took for granted as distractions that we were so involved in. Football is one of them. If you follow sports in general, across the world, whatever the sport is, but you identify with a team for whatever reason. You were raised on it. You moved to an area, you didn't have a team, but then all of a sudden you find yourself in a social setting that this is something that you identify with. You're buying the gear, you're watching the games, you're cheering for a team. You hate another team. You hate the fans from another team, whatever it is. It's usually an all good fun, hopefully. But I was very happy that we had this back again, all things considered, of all the seriousness that is happening in the world, as it always is. What we're dealing with right now is unique, but at the same time, it's much the same. There's always something going on in the world that you can really wrap your head around, and all of a sudden, that's your day-to-day. The distractions are fun because you look at the things that, if anything's going to divide us, it should be, and that was my post, is that it should be more trivial things, because there's no real growth through a true divide where you have your blinders on and you block out certain people of your life, because these people were not blocked out prior to whatever said issue is. And if you only are basing your opinions of people on one issue, I am of the opinion that you are now selling yourself short, and you are closed-minded, and you are not learning anymore, and you are entering into, Shannon, who just left the audience, is, because he had to go home and he's got to work tomorrow, but it's that echo chamber, right? So you're not really doing this. So human nature is a topic for me that I think that we haven't talked a whole lot about. You know what I mean? It's an everyday nurture of yourself that if you come up to any of these sticking point topics, if you have a well-rounded approach to your everyday life and to yourself and the people around you, there shouldn't be many sticking points, especially when it's outside factors. That's my opinion. I'm not going to necessarily speak for anyone else, but I'm going to throw some of these things on here is that I love the idea of the fact that we have grown as a culture that we try to group a certain set of people. And now it's like, instead of the city, the state, now it's nation, it's global. So instead of like doing this, we were talking with the Huber family, and they are very successful in a town that is 1,000 some people, like an area that's 1,000 some people in Indiana, right? And they all work together on growing things, and it's very much a synergy. It sounds like that everyone's supporting each other, and clearly there is a lot of success there. Now all of a sudden you branch it out to the county, you branch it out to the state of Indiana, you go out to 330 million people in the United States, and we all are supposed to agree upon everything. Now you go out to the world, now you have billions of people, and it's like we should all look at things in the same manner, with no regard to the fact that it's like, what is that one out of however many billion people, what is their upbringing? You can bring in religion to this. You can bring in family set. You can bring in all sorts of things that are absolutely everyday factors that rule why you are the way you are today. And that's the whole thing where I'm looking at this, is that human nature, is it a nature versus a nurture thing? I mean, is this something that, what do you guys believe? And you listening out there as we get into this, and Josh was like, oh, deep. Absolutely. I look at this as it goes back to a tribal thing, is when you had smaller groups of people, you looked after yourself, obviously, and the people in your close-knit community. We've talked about the social circles of you. Again, I'm of the opinion that you really start with yourself, then you branch out a circle, then you branch out another circle, and then this continues to get out there exponentially, that your day-to-day life of what you believe is going to continue to expand into your network. And it depends on what you do for a living, what you do day to day. But I feel as though that we've gotten to a point anymore that we don't look at the nature versus nurture concept of why people believe what they believe in some of the hot topics today. And I looked at this, and I'm looking this up. I'm doing some searches on conversations and topics of nature versus nurture, human nature. And so first off, I'll come out with a heavy hitter here. Is tribalism and people separating themselves into us and them groups a learned or genetic trait? What do you guys think?
I'm gonna say learned. I'm gonna say learned.
Spot. Do you think it's a learned thing?
Yes. I think when you're a child and you're growing up and you're in grade school, like you're in a grade school of other kids from your community, and they can all be from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, countries of origin, but you're all in the same school, and you can become friends with any of them. And I don't think it's until you may get older, have different life experiences, where you then develop like your certain niche of how you believe, what you feel, and you can either grow that circle around you, or you can actually shrink that circle around you.
Okay.
But I think when you're younger, like that circle is as big as that kid wants it to be, as big as they can imagine. That when you're 5-6 years old, like you can be friends with anybody. Like kids will come up to just complete strangers in a park and hug them. Why? Because it's another person they don't know. You know, it's just another person. They have no, you know, when you're a young child, you have no concept of race, religion, or anything like that.
So you think it's a nurture thing?
When you get older, I think then how people either shrink or expand their circles becomes nurture. But right from the get-go, you know, a child's going to look at another child. they're just another kid. They're my age. They're in my class. Like, it's just another person like me. I remember.
Well, wait, like me.
Because when I say like me, they're a kid.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the equalizer there is age at that point.
Yeah. I remember there was one where there was an elementary school kid who.
And where were you? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up on the south end of Columbus.
Okay.
Smaller community, originally was a subset of a military base community.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember there was a story I had read years ago where these two kids were classmates in school, and one had cancer, and because of that had to shave his head, and the other kid shaved his head and said, "Hey, now they can't tell us apart. One was white, one was black."
Okay.
But neither one of them had any concept of that. They were just like, "Hey, we're both
concept
kids, we're
of
both
it, but
boys."
They don't value that difference, all right?
That could be. They may not have a value, or they may not understand that concept.
Which is not always the case, but this is something, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why the one kid shaved his head, so that way, it was his way of connecting with his classmate. Like, we were friends before, we're still going to be friends now, and now they won't be able to tell us apart, even though just at eyes glance the two of them were different. Just the spirit that other kid had was, no, you and I are the same.
Okay.
I don't think it's until we get older that we actually see that stuff, and I think it's because we learn that. I don't think it's necessarily it's ingrained.
Well, how do you learn that? I mean, you might be told.
It could be from our household, TV, or other people around us.
Yeah.
That we learn, oh, there's actually a difference between us. Like,
yeah, Ray already is chiming in, and that's what I love about this, doing it live, is there such a thing as human nature anymore? We are so bombarded with info, be it good or bad these days, that nature doesn't have a chance. Josh, what do you think about that, as far as what we're talking about here?
Yeah, it's deep and like Bobby's comment, Josh looks lost.
Are you?
No, absolutely not. I'm taking it all in.
I love it.
I'm taking it all in, and I think that we very much become product of our environments.
Yes.
Right. We become product of our environments, and going along, I couldn't have said it better than what Nate said, because you grow up as a child, and you can say a child is colorblind, right? Because you go to school and you play alongside of kids who are different ethnicities as you go to birthday parties, right? Of other students who are different than you, different, whether that be color, ethnicity, right? Whatever, race, religion, anything. And then as we grow, we become product of our environments. Now, do we have the option to be different? Absolutely, right? As we grow, as we educate ourselves, as we go through grade school and then graduate and go on to college, the opportunity therein lies for us to broaden our horizons, and we have a particular turning point, I believe, and where that is, it's different with everybody. Right. Much like palates, right. And our flavor profile. But that turning point to where we come, and it can be a particular issue that we come to a cross in the roads.
Yeah.
And we have to then decide, hey, right, this is what I've learned. This is what I have been taught up to this point, and now I have to decide on my own. And that can be a number of things, right? Something that is a world issue, right? That we have to make a decision on politically. Something that comes up, and a great example of that is when we turn 18 and we have the opportunity to vote, and then we have to decide on our own. Well, are we going to, do what our parents did and have the same mindset as that, or are we going a different path? And I think that is the the perfect example of that why in the road, and coming to that crossroads, if you will, in our life. 18 is just that point to where we can say, hey, now you have the the right to vote. But then, I mean, there are several other things too, when it comes to smoking, right? Whether that be cigars or something else. Then when we turn 21 and we have the opportunity to drink, enter into service, right? For some people, I know I remember when my brother was eyeing to go into the military, and none of my family had been in the military before that, and so that was a decision that he had to come up with and that he had to make for himself.
Well, I think, and you touched on it, like when you're a kid, your focus is very, very narrow, because you don't have, like, you don't know about all these other things going on in the world. And then once you become, like you alluded to, voting age or drinking age, or you become an adult, like, then you're exposed to all these other issues, and those issues then start to like pinpoint you in a direction of a much broader area. So when you're younger, like, this is what you care about. As you get older, there's more things for you to care about, but people kind of pinhole themselves into certain areas. They don't necessarily have to pinhole themselves to a certain.
Do you think that those 18 years that are forming you as a individual, right, as a child that is now growing into an adult, or as we call it, an adult, whatever that age is, because that's always a debate as well. Do you think that when you have those options now, that has not formed you into those positions that you're in at that point? It's not like this new experience that all of a sudden, like, oh, I get to vote now. Everything that leads up to that, do you think that
oh, absolutely,
builds you to that?
Absolutely.
So that your 18 years versus the other, let's keep it in America right now, the United States, not America, but the US, but you keep it in there. Of the 300 and whatever it is, 28 million, whatever the number is today, 330 million people, do you think that your 18 years is similar or different than anyone else? Based on who you chose as parents of being born, right? Ironically, right? This is obviously not the case, but this is something that's like, you chose to be, we're all at this table, we're all three white males that grew up in Ohio, correct? Josh, you as well. And we all have different backgrounds, but even the three of us, like, that's what I'm not getting at anything, but like, to you guys and to you guys out there, there's some great comments I do want to get to, because Austin has this great experience as a father right now that he put out there that I want to introduce to the table as well. But the three of us, 18 years, I think you can keep it treetop level. Do you think that your childhood in those 18 years was similar or the same as, Nate to Josh and I? Josh, Nate and myself, and to me, you guys, you think it's that similar, that when you hit that 18 years, now all of a sudden you have to make choices? Or do you think it's based on the fact that you had those 18 years experience building up to that point?
I think a lot of us, if we're just looking at like going through grade school, I think a lot of us are going to have very similar experiences, regardless of where in the country you went to school. Obviously, there's going to be some exceptions, like inner city LA, inner city Chicago is going to be very different than going to a school in the suburbs of Ohio. But
inner city Columbus,
or inner city Columbus. But I think for the most part, if we're just talking about us going through grade school, a lot of us are going to have similar experiences, even though we may be in different cliques. There's going to be some similar experiences. I think what the biggest change is once we get out of high school or out of grade school or out of college, and then we start experiencing the world on our own or living on our own and having to make our own choices. When we're a teen, when we're a child through our teen years, you wake up, you go to school, maybe you do sports practice, you come home, eat dinner, watch TV, go to bed. And you do the same thing 5 days a week.
That's very unique to the U.S., by the way.
Yeah, it is.
I want to comment.
But then once you get out of that, once you get out of school, now you choose. Even people that go to college, like if they're no longer with their parents, like if they go to an out-of-state school or they're far enough away to where they're not living at home, they don't have that parental influence as much. So they're still making some of their own choices, whether they go to class or not.
So this is, Ray brings up, and I think this is a great point that, sorry to say it, but this separation is more prominent in the USA than anywhere, in my opinion. And again, being, so from my vantage point is part of that is, again, the linear history that we've talked about on this podcast before in part 2 is that this is still a melting pot, right? So this is something that there are other countries out there that people are not going to, whether, again, with the U.S., there's a very unique history, but it's not that unique, is that, people have been over the years brought to this country for different reasons, or they've joined this country for other reasons, but it's not like the American dream is a given. And so I think that he is absolutely right that we are unique to a point that a lot of countries have the separation that we have in the United States. Very unique country that people seem to, in my opinion, forget that there is such a great divide based on who, again, your parents were, where you, and I'm going to say this again because this my viewpoint, and I learned this in college in a sense that this is like when you are born, sarcastically, you are much wiser to be born in this country under a middle to upper class white family in the suburbs than you are to be born in a third world country somewhere else in the United States where you have a low survival rate up to the age of 5. Like it's sarcastic, but it's very real, right? So this is where we're at. So, Ray, you're hitting on a very important part of the topic is that, there is a nature versus nurture thing, but I think out of the gate, there is a little bit of a nurture thing. It's not nature based on genetics. It's based on nurture right out of the gate. Who are you born to, and what is your life circumstance at that moment when you come out of that womb? That people do tend to just not think about, in my opinion. Again, I'm going to say that a lot tonight because this is something there's no right answer on this topic.
Yeah.
I'll say that right now.
Well, and like you said not too long ago, like all three of us grew up most of our childhood here in Ohio. And so like we probably all had very similar upbringings. But once we became adults and actually started viewing things for ourselves and moving out of our parents' umbrella over top of us, like then we actually started making some of our own choices as to what we believed and on every single issue.
Yeah.
But
that
I know there
is different for everyone else. That age is different. That
circumstance
is always different. It
Yeah,
can happen at 12. It can happen at 18. It can happen at
30,
more.
40. Well, yeah, whatever
it is. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I know there are some things that, my parents and I differ on our opinions of, and I'm sure it's the same thing with you guys. Like, even though I grew up under their household and learned a lot from them, because I had my own experiences, I was able to make choices for myself as to how I believe on certain topics or issues. They may have had an influence because of my upbringing or what their opinion is, how much value I put into their opinion, but I still get to make that choice myself based on how I feel. And you guys all get to do the same thing, even though the three of us probably had similar upbringings. How we chose to sit on one side or the other of a topic is different.
Okay. Josh, you have anything on
that?
You can say no.
No, not right away. I don't.
I look at this. There's a lot of basic things that I want to introduce to this, and again, I know this is going to go long tonight because we had a 2-hour thing, and Josh, I don't want to keep you, and we'll try to keep this as much to an hour, but I feel like this is a topic that
great.
It's interesting because we had the Huber family on, right? And we see this is that I think that is a prime example of the fact that they are in the family business because they were born. And again, I'm going to use this term to hopefully anyone that is listening out there is to really in an everyday life situation is that so what's Christian's brother's name? Brian? You don't know.
I mean, on the spot. No.
God damn it. I forget. If text him, will you?
It begins with a B.
It does start with a B, and I feel guilty not remembering it. But both of them, yeah, we text Christian because I feel absolutely guilty.
I think he only said it once.
Yeah, I know. Anyways, the point is that they, air quote, chose to be born into the Huber family that has this long lineage of history, right? Of this family business, farming, the winery, and everything else, and they clearly are sharp individuals genetically also, that they were be able to be born into this, and they are not that black sheep of the family that we know of based on the conversation tonight, is that they are continuing this on. You get it?
Blake.
I would have never gotten that.
Blake.
So you got Blake and you got Christian tonight, and they're 23, 25, and they are absolutely killing it because they chose to be born into this family. Again, ironically, I'm being sarcastic there, is that they chose to be born in this family that has this great resource to them, not only in knowledge, but also in this family history, this business and everything else. And it sounds like, and again, we don't know the other aspect, the other, besides the 2 hours we had, but the other 23 years, 25 years, they might have fucked up at some times. They might in the future. But when we talk to them, they are driven. They have that nurture side of it. But the nature side of it also, I think, pulls into that, is that they also are fortunate enough to be of sound mind that they can actually do all that stuff. So I think that's always that thing, is that, when I look at this, and I don't want to go too far hot topic on this, and I'm looking at some of these comments. I love them. But
so a great question for them would be,
okay,
what age or at what point did they embrace? What point did they embrace
Absolutely.
that, right?
Yeah.
And say, hey, this is our family's heritage. This is what I want to go into and be a student, be a product of, and carry on that legacy, right? Of of that family. And you see a lot of this in, that's agriculture, that's farming. You can look at it in the world of sports, right? And using, I don't know, a great name, Michael Jordan, right? And what did his son do? His son followed after him, and did he have the career that his father had? No, I think he went to college, and then I don't know if he made it into the NBA. Did he want? And that's a particular point that I was honing in on,
right?
But business is another thing, right? If you have a family business and your parents want you to carry on that business or that legacy, and you have no passion for that, right?
If you come from so their family's 7 generations, you brought up Michael Jordan, who's a legacy. If you come from a legacy, or a family tree that's owned, like the same family business that's run for multiple generations, do you think there's more pressure on the child to follow in the quote unquote family footsteps?
There can be,
as opposed to someone who, like my parents, my mom's been a secretary for 40 plus years. My dad was a UPS driver. There was no family legacy, because it's not like everyone in the family did, UPS driving, or everyone in the family was a secretary. There was no legacy there. So I never felt pressure to do either one of those things.
Yeah. No, you say legacy. No, hang on real quick. Like you say legacy, like Michael Jordan. Yeah, he was a famous basketball player, businessman, and everything like that. But the legacy is an interesting term, because you talk about your father. How many years did he work there?
My dad was there for 34 years.
How is that not a local or family legacy for you? It's the same thing in my mind. Very successful, very loyal, all of that. You learned a lot from that. Same thing as a kid. Like, you didn't go into that business necessarily, but did you or did you not learn lessons from your dad doing that all that time? Did Michael Jordan's son, or like to your point, Josh, And again, we're talking about two different levels as far as that goes. But in the U.S., that is a successful career that provided for the family. Now, your dad did not make billions of dollars necessarily doing what he did. However, did he support the family?
He did support the family.
So there are lessons there. This is kind of the direction of the conversation that I want to get to, is that it doesn't necessarily matter what level of success, whatever you deem as success. And you got a comment that
I love what Sean just posted.
All right. What I like what Ray said too. So Ray, if I can find this, I'll put it up on the screen for everyone. Sounds like a cop out to me. I can honestly say that I enjoyed my time living in the U.S., but the level of ignorance to the rest of the world is unbelievable. That arrogance carried around by many Americans is not justified, especially now. What I'm saying is that this is part of why I'm introducing this topic, that I would love to hear some of the honestly, like the more I love what we have to say, and I love what our audience has to say. I would love to see this topic get there on some of the million-some follower podcasts, million-some follower talk shows. All that stuff is like, break it back down to the basics and don't go surface level. That is so easy and cheap, which brings that sensationalism to what's going on in the world. Because Ray, I got to say to you is that, it's not a cop out, but the whole thing is that there's nothing wrong with, in my opinion, having that ignorance if you are having a good life. Because as soon as you start, we've talked about this, I've said this, is that as soon as you start trying to solve every stranger's problem in the world, the one thing that I can almost guarantee, again, this is again opinion, is that you're neglecting your own life. Because you're so consumed with the bigger causes that you're either going to not be a good parent, you're going to go through a divorce, you're going to be going through depression because you're so dissatisfied with the bigger picture. And that goes back to that initial thing that I said about tribalism, is that you bring it back down to your understanding of why you believe what you believe, as opposed to fighting everyone else's causes that you clearly have no nurture or nature on why you fucking, other than the fact that you think that it's not right. So you call it ignorance, Ray, and I love you. I'm not fighting with you here, but it's like you call it ignorance. And I'm not saying ignorance is bliss in this situation, but it's like a random person necessarily can't always solve a person's problems halfway around the world. Okay. And I will say this, that based on what he said about like being bombarded with all this information and everything else, is that we've lost that. I think that we're more consumed with someone. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that you didn't know what was going on in Kansas City if you lived in Columbus, Ohio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It would filter through newspapers and get there, but it's up to them to figure that part out. Now you find out about something that happened in some random city in a random country, and you're like, that's wrong. That's a new cause. And you're like, what about what's going on in your fucking neighborhood?
Yeah.
You forgot about that. Because the scope has gotten so broad that now we're supposed to be responsible for every fucking person in the world. And the identity of what your personal responsibility is has been ticked down to a point of neglect, typically. And that's, I feel like that is a big portion of where we're at today, of trying to make sure that if you don't think the way I think about everything in the world, then you don't deserve to necessarily do this, or you don't, you know what I mean? Like it's a flip back and a very hypocritical standpoint in as what you view as far as who is doing the right thing in the world on a day-to-day basis.
Well, and I think to that, living in the US, because of media, because of social media, and in general, how good we have it here in the US, I think that's what causes people to spread themselves too thin into taking issue with all these things going on everywhere else. Like if it wasn't for the national media that we have, if it wasn't for social media, I think people would spend more time focusing on themselves and what's immediately around them. But I think now, because we can, find news about things from all over the world, people take up causes too quickly and they spread themselves too thin. They start focusing on all that other stuff instead of focusing in their home base.
And that's where I think the nurture side of it, that if you look at this from a wider scope, is that when I look at nature versus nurture, or a combination of both, is that's the great conflict right now, is that, the nurture side of it is not necessarily, you started this conversation, Nate, and you agreed, Josh, is that as a child, you are brought up in a very, very narrow circle. It's more innocent, right? Now, there are people that aren't three white males that are sitting at this table that, grew up in Midwest U.S. suburbs, more or less, right? Call it middle class, give or take, whatever that means anymore. But if you are born into a family that, again, right out of the gate, you're struggling, you're starving in a sense in the U.S. or elsewhere, that's a different upbringing. But now it's almost, at least in this country, it's almost a right to have an iPhone. It's expected. $1,000 device
as an 8-year-old
is expected to have that. We don't have a grasp on reality of what is the value of money anymore, in my opinion, with that, right? And that is a product of where we've come with this. But I will say is that here's a very easy target there, is that, Josh or Nate, if you were born in a different country of a different race, do you think your childhood would be the same?
Oh, no.
No, it wouldn't have been. But I think also part of the reason because of that is I don't think other countries are as much of a melting pot as we are here in the U.S. And you used that term earlier, the melting pot.
And Ray said something different.
And like, if I was born in Spain, I would probably be going to school with a lot of people whose families have been in Spain for generation upon generation.
Probably spoke Spanish.
Yeah. If I was born in Somalia, I would have been around kids whose families have been in Somalia or Northern or Eastern Africa for generations upon generations.
Try to get to the U.S.
and try and immigrate, try and get the hell out of there. But other countries and other societies don't necessarily have the mix of races that we do here in the U.S., or even the mix, as broad a mix of religions as we do here in the U.S. So I think in some of those other countries, it would have been much more homogenous. You would have had an upbringing where more people were like you.
But I think that's the case here too.
In some aspects, yes, but in other aspects, we do grow up with people that are different than us.
Yeah, but it's limited, right? Based on your experience, right? So I'm not going to speak for you guys, but I mean, I grew up, moved to the Columbus area from Chicago when I was 7, and growing up in the public schools of the suburbs, it was predominantly white. It was predominantly middle class. It was predominantly easy, other than typical adolescent stuff, right? What we consider adolescent stuff. But I wasn't concerned with, that I was going to get shot. I wasn't concerned with that. Like nowadays, that happens everywhere, and it did happen. There were bomb threats and stuff like that. Again, I'm going back to the late 80s and through the 90s and stuff like that. And I think that's also part of this too, is that when you chose to be going with that theme that I'm saying, when you chose to be born into this world, right? Because you had everything to do with it, is that you were born in this year, and that's your childhood. And again, linear history is something that I feel like people are constantly neglecting. But again, me, it's like I had black friends, I had friends of other ethnicities, but it was true minority at that point in my schools. You know what I mean? And I look at the people that were raised in the suburbs where I was, and I had an appreciation. Now this is where I'm going to switch it a little bit, is that my my nature and my nurture growing into that is that my parents were those that they didn't talk about race. They didn't talk about wealth or social class, right? As much. It was definitely apparent. And I look back now and it was apparent, right? You know, I was that suburban kid that in my, you know, in the 90s. So I was in my teenage years that we had our house on the market because my dad, you know, we moved here to start a firm for his financial planning, and then it didn't go well. So my mom, through all this, years, decades later, still lives in that house. But that house was on the market, and we had to clean up and leave the house to put it up, you know, so people could show it and all that stuff. And as a kid, you didn't really realize that. And it seems like such a minor issue to a lot of people out there with the severity of what we see day to day. But I also, fortunately, on the nurture side of it was yes, this friend of mine was black, or my friend of mine was of Latino descent, like you're talking about, Nate. That wasn't a breaking factor. I did not have that upbringing that it's like, oh, you can't be friends with that person.
Yeah.
That's the fortunate side for me on the nurture side, that fortunately for me has, I feel like, transferred into my adult life, that I'm desensitized in a good way. And that might be shocking to some people out there, is that terminology of desensitized in a good way is that I don't care what your background is. I don't care what you identify as. That's the nurture side of it. And I feel as though we are getting to this point where it's fighting battles that are important, but it's at all sacrifice, so that it's overcorrecting. And I think that you know, I feel fortunate enough with that based on my upbringing, but I also have an appreciation that not everyone chose to be born of a white suburban family that lived in the Midwest of the United States. And that's where, how do we get to that point that we get back to the roots of it all, and that we have an understanding? It's like, it's not about today. It's about years in the making.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I very similarly, grew up in a Ohio suburb of Cincinnati, and much like you, Steve, I went to school, and looking at it, primarily it was white, but I went to what would be minorities' birthday parties, right, of different ethnicities, whether they're from India or whether they were African American, and I didn't think anything of it at that time, right? I didn't. It didn't mean anything to me. I was just going to a birthday party, and until later. So then I guess the question begs the question, like, how much does media, right, have a part into creating our mindset, and what they're trying to get us to think a certain way, I think is what it comes down to. Or how much does the media accentuate the issue?
I think when, living where we live, or the upbringing that we had, when you're young, your family is your influence. As you get older and the society we've grown into now, media has become more of an influence than our own family.
Yeah.
The media
it wasn't that way back then.
Yeah, the media was not as big of an issue growing up in the 80s and 90s as it is now.
Yeah.
Like, when we watched the local news, it was literally the local news. It was what was going around Columbus or Ohio. It wasn't what was going on out in California, or what was going on in England, or what was going on in Africa or China, Japan. Like we had no clue what was going on.
You watch the news?
I don't.
Josh?
No.
And I'm happier for it.
Internet, Sean, you watch the news? We got. I'm going through the Michaela. No. So I hear that more and more, especially after this year. And that's the sad part here in the U.S. And I know we have people different parts of the country and different parts of the world listening, but that is, in my opinion, the sad state of affairs right now. For a lot of adults. And now you got to think, right? So context of this conversation is that you have a lot of adults with kids, without kids, but there's influence on the next generation. Is that they are now tuning out the news because of the bias. Again, going, like I have it on the screen, topic, human nature. It's being pushed away from us, in my opinion. So it's not about necessarily the genetic side of things. It's about the nurture. But nurture, I feel like, has this typically a very positive connotation to it, right? Nurture, you nurture, you have a plant, you want to nurture it to life. You want to make that plant. We're talking with the guys, from Starlight, they have a farm. They nurture the crops so that they are fruitful. If you were to take that mentality of making sure that your crop is fruitful and the most successful, and have that realization of why do they, as farmers, nurture their crops to make sure that they are fruitful and healthy and of a very big yield? Why do they do that?
So they can earn a living.
They can earn a living, and it is a product. It is a reflection of them.
It's a return on investment.
Return on investment.
That's good, yeah.
So how do we, and why don't we look at this as the same way? Why don't we look at the generations that we're reflecting upon as this nurture side of it? Why are we bombarding them with all of this? Where it's negative, it's a divide, it's all of this. Why? And I know it's more complicated than that when you're not talking about plants, you're talking about people, but it's one of those things that if the overall effort is to educate and to realize that you are not going to fix it today. And I love this, and I wish that the Hubers were a part of this conversation, because they think they could bring a big aspect to this conversation, is that they're not necessarily tilling that soil. They're not growing that crop for tomorrow. They're growing the crop so that they know that it will be successful when it comes to fruition, when it becomes a product. You go into this, and this is a really deep stretch for some people, but when you talk about, like, even the bottle that we're drinking tonight, 4.5 years, that is this foresight of this objective goal that I want to make this product, when it's ready, to be the best that it can be. Do you think we're doing that today?
On an individual level, I mean, it'd be a generalization if I said on an individual level, no.
All right. So
because
give your answer, though.
Well, because I think people are just too concerned with too much that they don't necessarily have an effective impact on. Like, okay, you can concern yourself with what was going on a couple years ago with human rights in Hong Kong, but like, what are we actually going to do about that here in the U.S. from an individual standpoint, not as a country, but as an individual?
Okay.
Like, and unless I actually go there and take up cause with them and fight with them, like, how much, like, yeah, you putting your hashtag out there on Instagram or Facebook, that's not doing shit. Right. Like, you're just saying, like, oh, I care about this. I can't actually do anything about it. I'm not actually going to do anything about it, but I care about it. Like, how much of an impact does that actually have? None.
Well, a good topic or perspective would be what's happening in Cuba right now.
Right.
Right. You know, and
How so?
So the human rights aspect in Cuba and the civil unrest that's going on there and the way that the people are treated right now has come to the forefront of the American media in the past 2-3 months.
Yeah, it's the hot topic. It's this country is now.
But we'll move on quickly.
And so I think that's, you were talking about the human rights or in Hong Kong. And I think that this is a real topic right now that's close to our industry, because there are a lot of people in South Florida and a lot of people in our across the nation and in our industry that are of Cuban descent and harbor and have a lot of very strong feelings towards the government and the suppressive nature that has been going on in Cuba and what they've had to do about it. And so I think that's a perfect example. Native, what can you do about it, right? Other than, make a post on social media. What is an individual going to do? And then so that leads to the question, well, so then a whole group of individuals that come together, right, to urge our government to, hey, you need to intervene, you need to step in, something needs to happen here, because what's going on in Cuba and what they're doing to their people and in some aspects could be looked at as a genocide, right? A killing of innocent people over politics.
Well, I think the Cuba thing was a great example also, is that what I saw on social media was the fact that it's like, this is the next country from the U.S. standpoint, right? That there's COVID issues, because that was so easy to isolate, that there was medical supplies not going into that country. And then as you dove into it, if you dive into it, and again, we're all in the cigar industry, so we do pay a little bit more attention to Cuba, right? With that part, I've been there, and I know some people from there. Luckily, from my travel, is the fact that it wasn't necessarily about COVID. That was their hot topic. That it's like, we're not getting the care we need because of the overall circumstances.
But the government,
the communist government.
Yep.
Supposed to have a great healthcare. This is a communist healthcare that you're supposed to take care of everyone.
Right.
That's the one of the benefits of living in that country, and they can't get the COVID response that they need. And it's like, why do you think that is? As soon as you look into that, and you read other articles other than CNN or Fox News in this country, it's like you actually hear more about the fact that that's not why they're protesting. There are actual other facts there. It's like, this is a hot button to the fact that it's like, this is an overwhelming issue with our country, and the fact that the government really doesn't have our best interests in mind. But I think the nurture side of the social media, and we're bringing this into it, is that the social media side of it is that they're nurturing the overall population with these agendas. That is a nurture side of it, is that they are trying to, in a sense, raise this whatever your generation is. But if you identify with those causes, now I'm going to nurture that. And I got to be honest, I think there's a lot of goodwill there. I think there's a lot of good intentions there, but it's short-sighted, much like families. As you are raised in that family, and when you go back to the first 18 years of your life, it's based on the knowledge that you have and your viewpoints and your opinions and your ideology of who the people you interact with, whether it be social class, race, or political party, or whatever it might be, what country you're in. But it's these things that's the education. The reason I brought this whole nature versus nurture, like the human nature thing is that do you guys believe in human nature in this day and age as much as you did when you were being raised, when you were growing up? What do you guys believe? And the audience involved as well, here in the garage and also out there in the audience out there. But you guys, Nate and Josh, do you believe more in nature or do you believe more in nurture at your age? Nate, you're how old?
37.
Josh?
35.
35. So mid-30s. Nate, you're late 30s. Sorry, I'm going to give it to you. Late 30s, early 40s. But do you believe more in nature or nurture?
I think it depends on the age of the person. Me
You.
personally,
I'm asking you.
there's still both in the world.
Okay.
Like, there is a natural feeling that we have towards people as a whole.
Yeah.
And then if we dive into certain topics, that may be where the nurture aspect comes through.
Okay.
You know, based on the nurture of our family, our life experiences, the decisions we made as young adults in our 20s, like all those things are going to shape how we view things. And that could be very different than, don't know why that went off.
I'll take it.
But it's on mute. But no, I mean,
I'll field any calls if you need calls.
but no, I mean, so I have a degree in biology, so I know there is a definite nature side of things.
Of course.
There's just a natural order and natural law to how we are as people. And that is where we start from. We then transition, I think, into nurture as we get older. Because then we're starting to focus more on more things than we do when we're younger. And those topics are not something that is ingrained in us through nature. Those topics come about by nurture.
So you have a base.
So how you
base, right?
So like if you're taking politics into it, how you feel about firearms in the country, that's not nature, that's nurture. How you feel about religion can go either way. You know, how you were brought up.
I'd say nurture as
I was
well.
going to say probably more nurture
than
anything based on how you grew up.
So what is nature? You know, human nature. What are we dealing with? To you, Nate.
If you want to get to the very,
I love the conversation. I'm sorry I can't include everyone in the conversation tonight, but
that was not my ringer, Ray. That was an alarm.
You got to go.
No.
When Josh comes around, I feel like it goes late.
What was the question again? You got me off. You got me.
Nature.
What
is
nature?
Nature in this context, right? Everything you're saying is all nurture. So what part is nature? Other than I'll get it. If you're born what we consider a handicap, right? Mentally, physically, right? I don't know if that's what we still call it out there in 2021, but if you are born with a like Down syndrome, or you're born with a birth defect, a severe birth defect where you literally you're very high level autistic, you have a physical defect, you know what I mean? Like that's just the science part, that's the nature part of it. Beyond that, what's the nature part of it? Is there a moral to you, Nate and Josh, because you guys are both religious, and I'm not Bobby Hirschman, I know you're listening, but is there a nature side of it, or is it nurture only? I think this is a very important conversation to have as a society, that I wish that, I know we're not experts on this, and we're just a few dudes talking about it with a few people listening live and out there in the internet world, but This is something that you don't talk about on the news anymore. Is there a nature side of why people are in the situation they're in?
Well, I think, and I know this is on you, Nate, but
Your typical cigar podcast.
I think that nature, when it comes to it, that it is human nature to be connected to others. Period. Right?
I think
social species.
Yeah, we are.
We're a social species.
We are a social species, and we have it ingrained in us to be connected to other humans.
Yes. I think where the nurture side comes in is to what humans we connect with. Because if I not to get religious whatsoever, but if
Bobby
you
Hirschman says he's Catholic and he's fine with religion as long as it does not take over the Bourbon and Cigar podcast.
And I'm not going to do that, Bobby. But like, if you want to get down to it, by nature, we are not good people.
Ooh.
Because we're
Eve. we going Genesis. Where are we going with this? Inherent evil.
You could have people. You could have a group of people that were all raised on an island, and they're still going to find something to fight over.
Okay.
Even if they have no outside influence from the rest of the world, they all grew up in the same area. They're still going to find something to fight over. That is in our nature. I think initially.
Welcome to the first 12-hour podcast, the Bourbon BS podcast. Josh, you're not going anywhere.
I think initially when we're younger, because of that innocence we have when we're younger, our nature is to just be friends with anyone because the issues that are out there are very, very small, as in few. I should say the number of issues that we actually care about are very few.
Yeah.
As we get older, those issues expand.
Okay.
And that's when we start to find differences with each other. And it may have nothing to do with who our parents are. Like I said, you could still have if you had a group of 100 people that were all raised on an island, and then at the age of 18, all their parents moved away and the rest of them still had to live on an island, they're still going to find something to fight about.
Why?
Because that's in our nature. Like, we're still going to find that someone is going to disagree with us about how to get off the island, and we're not going to like it, and we're going to fight over them about it. Because someone's ego.
So this is inevitable in your opinion. That's the nature side of it. It's inevitable.
That we're going to find differences. Yes.
Okay.
As we age, we're going to find differences.
Josh, what do you think?
Well, so then I like what Nate is saying, but then when it goes back to what I said was we're a product of our environment. So when something changes in our environment, and we just celebrated 9/11, right? The anniversary of September 11th.
We didn't celebrate it.
Excuse me.
No, I know you meant.
I know what you meant.
20
Yeah,
years since 9/11.
I did not mean to say that, but we paid tribute to those that we lost and we remembered.
Yeah.
But think of when 9/11 happened.
Think about 9/12.
Think about the days that followed 9/11. Our country unified like no other time in history.
Why do you think they unified?
Because there was a common enemy.
2001.
At that time, there was a common cause.
In 2001, everyone that was an American when 9/11 happened felt the hurt and anger.
Well, I'm going to broaden it out.
But then also felt
the whole world felt that.
Yeah, but then within America, we all felt that love towards our fellow Americans. There were commercials that were put out, like Budweiser always did some amazing commercials, in after 9/11, about us being unified as a nation, because we all felt hurt. It wasn't only people in New York were attacked. America was attacked. And so even though the attacks happened in New York, DC, and Pennsylvania, everyone across the U.S. felt it. People around the world felt it as well. But over the last 20 years, something happened that broke that unity.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask both of you guys this, everyone out there listening. And if you're listening to the audio and all this stuff, please email bourbonandbspodcast@gmail.com. If you were alive during that time, and not all of our listeners were, but what did you actually do? What did you actually do other than identify with America? Because I will challenge all of you guys. I'm not, in no way am I belittling what happened on 9/11/2001. The world changed for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember, for me, this is our, we talk about this, and everyone talks about this is our generation, and we're all I'm now in my 40s, early 40s. You guys are in your 30s. This is our Kennedy assassination, right? This is our life-changing thing. And there's so many things that happen. I remember when the Gulf War started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I didn't change my everyday life.
When you say Gulf War, you mean 90s or
90s?
Okay.
90s. The Gulf War.
The Gulf War.
Yeah, with Bush,
Yep.
Yeah. But my point is that, do you actually have many things changed with everything in the political standpoint, right? So this is maybe an age thing, right? So everything that's changed with stuff that's going on right now and everything else, but it's like, do you actually change your everyday life as an American to dedicate your life or sacrifice your conveniences when 9/11 happened, other than TSA change and traveling became a bitch, right? When in our life, I think, and I know Ray's listening out there, I think still, but I will say this is that's one of my points, is that when these big things happen, how much does it alter your everyday life in America? Or do we sensationalize these events? Not saying they're not important, but that now there is a reason for divide. What I'll say about 9/11 is that, and I agree completely, is that there was a unification of the country, because for the first time in my almost 41 years, and my mom still living, is 70 something, that this was the first attack on American soil
since 1941.
And she was born in 47. So this is something that, how do you absolutely wrap your head around how you're supposed to react to those types of actions? We are more polarized, in my opinion. Maybe I'm of the age, and we're of the age, and we're of the age as a society, that in the U.S. and nationwide, is that what's going on right now is that nature versus nurture is thrown to the wayside, that now it's just today. It doesn't matter. The linear history to most people does not matter. But if you're able to enjoy yourself, and I'm in a bad mood, if we're able to do a podcast and drink whiskey and smoke cigars and talk about this stuff, there's someone out there that might have tuned in and be like, these assholes don't know what they're talking about. And they might be a white male smoking a cigar listening to this podcast. It's just that different, because we don't give any credibility of the nature nurture concept. It's today. It's not your years leading up to this.
So when 9/11 happened 20 years ago, Steve, you were 20.
Yeah, I was in college. I remember it.
You were 20. I was 17. Josh was 15.
Yeah.
Do you think the three of us would have reacted differently if 9/11 had happened today in the age that we all are? Do you think we would have reacted differently now than we did when we?
So based on our upbringing, I'll comment on that. Based on our upbringing, I think it would have been very similar, if not more aggressive. But this country as a whole, it would have been different.
How so? How would have been different?
I think there would have been some identity with the sickness, and this is not me. Like, there's a mentality, the anti-American, the sickness of our country, that there would have been justification to the attack on our system as a country.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's not justified, that we're not perfect as a country. I think that there are enough voices out there, and there's enough the social media and everything else. I think that there would be something there, that there would have been a movement that, yeah, we are a bad country. If it was 2 years ago, I think it would have been more polarized. If it happened a year from now, I think it would be different. This is that linear history I keep going back to. I think there is something there that people neglect, the fact that we are constantly learning as a country, as a world, as a people, and everything else. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I think that we do not operate. Most Americans do not operate with a 30,000 foot view
Treetop level.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't look ahead enough. We can't see behind, right? But as Steve said, we're living in the day to day. It's me, right? And what can I do for me, and what's happening tomorrow, but living in the day to day. And I think that hinders us. And yeah, we see it now. Sad.
All right, getting back to the topic. When I approached this topic, I had no idea this is where it would go. I'm not upset about it. I think this is real talk. I love this part of the podcast, and I feel like that we could start a separate podcast, whatever we want to call it. I don't know if Altadis would sponsor it, but I know Josh would be a guest.
Sure.
But this is something that, again, it's going back to the roots. It's just a very basic understanding of what the topic is: human nature. I feel as though I'm of the opinion that we neglect why people think the way they think. Instead, we think more of why you don't think the way I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's a semantics thing when you actually look at the English language, but there is more of a root of personality and understanding and lifestyle, that it's, again, I'll say it again, it's not about why you think the way you think, but it's why you don't think the way I think. It's a mentality. And the way I came across this topic tonight is, again, to reintroduce, it's nice to have the sports talk. It's not necessarily productive, but it's a kind reintroduction of the fact that we can argue about trivial stuff, but as soon as we are arguing constantly about important factors of others' well-being, now you bring that mentality of sports into that. Now it's, you root for this political party versus this one. I'm against you. that is not productive as a growing society. That is productive in a division of a population. We've seen it in history, and we'll see it again. And I think that's a big threat. But I think that this whole thing about nature versus nurture thing, if we have a great reset, if there was a platform of, hey, we're of this mindset because of the way we're raised, how do we fix the future versus how do we fix tomorrow? There's a big, big benefit to us as a population. We're not going to fix it tomorrow. Our generation, whatever your viewpoint is, it's screwed. If you think it's bad, we're screwed. And I tell you what, I'm sorry, bad news. You're not going to fix it.
You talked before in Columbus, it's bringing home. In Columbus, when we got a new police chief that wants to implement different policies, those policies aren't going to change anything right now. They're trying to change things for the next generation or the generation behind them. Because the people that are already in the community now, they already most of them are set in their ways. They're going to do whatever it is they're going to do, regardless of who the mayor is, who the chief of police is, who the governor is. They're just going to do what they're going to do. When new people come into power and start making policy changes, they're not going to change the adults that are out there now.
Right.
They're trying to influence and make better for the next generation to come or the generation after them. So when a policy change happens, it's not going to be an overnight fix. They're hoping that the fix is going to come. They may want the change to come now, but that's a very hard thing to do. It's a very hard thing to immediately change people's minds and start acting differently. You're just hoping to influence the next people coming up.
Right.
And hopefully those policies make things better for them.
Yeah. All right. So this has been a long part 1, part 2 podcast. We're at 3.5 hours. I think this is a new record. I do want to mention a couple comments here as we go into closing remarks, right? If I can see this. Ray said, that's a great point, Steve. Can you imagine growing up in the current environment in the U.S.? And the follow-up was separation is definitely encouraged. I don't have the comment anymore, but, Austin mentioned earlier that he had a daughter, I believe, that became friends with a child that was a child of a convicted felon.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that he's dealing with as a parent, that how do I navigate through this? So I think this is something that's a great point that we can go into our closing remarks on this. And this was a deep topic, and we're a little bit deeper in the night. So there's a little bit more whiskey involved, and we were listening. We had a great part 1. Part 2 was a little later started.
The whiskey was spread out among more people than just you.
It is. We know what we're saying right now, but I think that's a great part is where do we go from here type thing. Is that, do you think that, everything that we've said on the panel tonight, Nate, Josh, and I, 30s now, 40s for me, and Josh, you're the only one on the panel that has a microphone in front of them. Also a sponsor of the show. So you can choose your words as you'd like, but I know you're very honest and you're very, very much a family man. Is you have children growing up in the world today. So human nature is the topic, nature versus nurture. How do you address this current? If we were raised in this world today, the three of us, but more apparent and more in your face is you have 2 kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're dealt that hand. What do you believe more in? Is nature versus nurture, and how are you navigating through all this culture that we have now?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. I think that I need to be more intentional. Now after having this conversation and how I navigate this for my family and to my kids who are going to be growing up in this world and the environment in which we live. I think that it brings an aspect that it's always there, but we don't give it enough time, right? We don't talk about it enough, and we aren't intentional about topics like these. These oftentimes fall by the wayside, and it's just kind of how we grow up and we learn from our environment, and those intentional conversations don't always happen, and we're left to kind of figure it out by ourselves. And if we want to make a difference, I think it's sitting down and having the intentional conversation of hey, this is this is the world that we live in. This is status quo right now. This is what I believe. This is what we believe in our family. And if, whether you grow up believing this or not, it's kind of laying it out there and having that intentional conversation, I think, is more important than just letting the cards fall as they will.
And I got to say, Josh, what I know of you is that you also live by example, which I think is a huge aspect of the nurture side of it.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I mean, that's something that, again, I feel as though that some people believe in, but then they also question themselves of how they acted that day or in that situation. And it's, once again, I think in the world today is that not you, but a lot of times if you have kids, and I don't have kids, but I know a lot of friends that have kids, and I've interacted with a lot of parents that on a personal level, as I've gotten older, is that now I'm of the age of said parents, and it's really easy to digress into a personal side of it without realizing, or with some neglect of the impact that you have on the next generation. And then you do the whole tough situation of do as I say, not what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And what I know of you, Josh, is that, I mean, you have your own personal struggles, as everyone does, but I'm saying this is that you try to lead by example, which I think is a very important part of all this conversation. And I do think that as a bigger thing, even though the topic is human nature, but I think the nurture side of it, as we get older, as we've talked about, is leading by example. Doing what I do, not what I say, is better than doing what I say, not what I do.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. Yeah.
Nate, closing remarks.
Well, kind of tied into that, you brought up Christian and his brother, and their operation. It's agriculturally based, and relating that to the topic, something that I had heard many years ago that has stuck with me. We've all heard that saying, "Reap what you sow."
Yeah,
there's 3 aspects of it. You're going to reap what you sow. So if you plant corn, you're not going to get strawberries.
Right.
you're going to get corn. You're also going to reap later than you sow. So when you plant a seed, you're not going to come out later that afternoon or the next day and suddenly you're going to have a mature plant.
Yeah.
It's going to take time to actually grow and develop. You're also going to reap more than you sow. You don't plant a corn kernel and grow a stalk that has one corn kernel on it. There's ears of corn, multiple thousands of kernels on that. So what's important, I think, is what you're sowing.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to reap what you sow and more than you sow, then what you sow plays a huge impact. So with us, we can look at ourselves, what did my parents instill on me? Because obviously when I was born, the next day I didn't have the same values as my parents did. It wasn't until years later I may have shared some of those values, but I may have also shared different values. The hope is that whatever we instill in that next generation, not only do they carry that flame, but hopefully it's a brighter flame, like adding logs to a fire. You're hoping every single generation is adding more and more wood onto that fire for whatever's passionate and important to you.
Yeah.
I'll leave it there before I just draw a blank and forget.
That was good.
It's very good.
That was really good.
I look at all this stuff is nurture versus nature. Nature is going to take its course. In today's world and what we've talked about and the way that we deal with other people that have dissimilar interests, or at least at surface level, there's not a conversation. We've talked about it on the podcast. There's talking to versus talking with or talking at.
Mm-hmm.
I would say this is that with nurture, and I know the topic is human nature, but I think part of human nature is hope. You mentioned that word, Nate, and I am of the mindset that I think that's one of the things that's lacking in a lot of the things that we are constantly talking about and constantly dealing with. It's this mindset of regression in our species, in our population, and it's always lately about disagreement and hate. And you replace, and my fear is that we have replaced and are continually the mindset of replacing hate with hate. And maybe it's optimistic or naive, but I think if you are educated in all aspects of it, is that if you want to have change and you want to have a bright future, I think our guests earlier tonight that aren't on part 2, but the Huber family, is that they're very sharp, they're very pure, and they're very honest, and it's a hope. Is if you, I'm going to go way back in this podcast. And if you have that mindset that you have to fix it today, it is very typical these days that the nurture side of it is, unfortunately, it's the polar opposite. It's that hand in front of your face. This is what's wrong, and I got to fix it right now. With the lack of honest and true and genuine hope that when you bring the hand away from your face, you can see everything more clearly. And now there's a hope for a better future. And I'll say this, at least I know Ray's listening, but in this country, the one thing, maybe I'm not listening, but the powers that be, medical, scientists, doctors, politicians, the word hope has not been used enough, because in reality, I am of the opinion that there is a lack of hope for a better future. And if we have that hope again, that is a pure, genuine positivity that we are moving in the right direction instead of fixing tomorrow. And I look at it from, Josh, you're coming as the guest. You have all these projects, you know, with the cigars. You have these projects with the Huber family of what they want to do. They have this mentality. There is this productive mentality in business, in relationships, and as a greater good, is that if you look at it, is that we're building blocks to have a great hope that we are moving in the right direction. I will challenge you guys to send me at any of the social media or at bourbonandbspodcast@gmail.com. You send me the articles that you're reading right now for a hope for a better tomorrow, as opposed to fixing what we fucked up. That mentality change is the nature versus nurture. The nurture side is keep it positive. Have that hope for a better tomorrow, as opposed to fixing what we messed up yesterday. Happy Whiskey Wednesday, everyone. Keep that hope alive. Cheers.